It's another tequila sunrise. This is actually my third. Just came over from Latin Slant. Yeah, I was over there singing, and if you really want to hear me sing, go check out his the rewatch of his last stream. I had a lot of fun. I really did, and I think that's going to be a weekly thing. I think I'm going to do at least one song on the Latin Slant channel from now on. Welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here. What a way to start the weekend with just hanging out with a bunch of friends. I super appreciate it. Let me real quick take a look back and say, you know what? My lovely and talented netter of Netters Network, first one here. So glad you're here. Love you so much, sweetie. And who's the very next one that I see? Bud Boys Production. My buddy from the other side of the pond is just singing some songs together over on Latino Slant. A lot of fun. We had a lot of fun over there. And Daniel Herron, who I'll be joining on Wednesday for the rewatch of Beverly Hills Cop. That'll be a lot of fun. Let me bring in my my partner in crime, Age Boomer. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'm drinking a... Oh, you didn't ask me what I'm sipping on.
I was just about to. What you sipping on?
I have a watermelon lemonade from Snapple, and if you'd like, I'll read the fact.
Go for it.
Well, I stretch my eyes. Okay, let's see. All porcupines float on water. Float in water. Okay.
That sounds like a challenge to me. Like I should go out and try to drown a porcupine now.
Okay.
I don't know.
Why are reading these caps useful? Let's see if you know why reading these caps are useful.
So you feel like you've learned something, maybe?
It's, you know what I think it's useful to, if you're at a bar and they have trivia night. Okay.
Good point.
And they say porcupines do what in water, and you go, oh, I know, they float in water or something. What can they,
Well, they do something that starts with an F, I suppose.
You will learn things from these caps that they'll throw in at a bar trivia night. Okay,
yeah.
That's what I suspect. So that's why you read them. Of course, you can't really read them on the new caps, but we'll stay positive tonight. We won't talk about the plastic bottles.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if one of y'all wants to Netter or Boomer, if one of y'all wants to drop the link for the Latino Slant, or actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, the pinned comment right up at the top was to tonight's video. That'll take you so you can go and laugh at me singing, but go and subscribe to him. He's the host of Midnight's Edge, Espanol. And he's got some really great content on his channel. And, you can laugh at the last 2 weeks of me singing on his channel. And as the night goes on, I drink a little bit more. I get a little sillier. And that gets me all primed up for, my stream. So I think we're going to do that on a regular basis.
Cool.
Age Boomer was just over there with me. And so was, Bud Boy Productions was over there singing a song, too.
He says, Hail Boomer.
Yep.
Like the movie Hail Caesar.
He's a Brit, but he was still waving the American flag, and I'll tell you that was incredibly encouraging to see.
I dropped Latino Slant's link.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do Bud Boys as well.
And she's gonna so you can subscribe to Bud Boy Productions too. He's a culture buff. I like this guy because he's a Star Wars fan. He's good people, And that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm an Anglophile, but his accent doesn't hurt, Just saying.
What would you call an Italian file? Would that be like Latin file? Because Latin language. What would the word be that for?
Italianophile, I suppose.
I don't know. Maybe. Okay.
Yeah, that's some more.
Bud Boy loves America. Hey.
I was just gonna say I saw him say it.
Somebody does. I'm sorry.
Well, right. Let me tell you. So many countries, you can moan and complain all you want about history and, the evils of things done in the past. But when you look at the relationship between Britain and the United States, okay, you look at the relationship between Japan and the United States, if you can fight a war against somebody and in time become close allies, That's got to say something, right?
Yeah. I
You
agree.
know, I mean, speaking, World War II and everything. I've been watching a lot of World War II, history lately, and just all of there's so much, just I guess what you'd call it these days is what do they call it, like low key bias or whatever in media of the day because we were at war with Japan, and it's like, man, that just doesn't exist today. I don't think I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody, who didn't like live through World War II that has any kind of bias against someone, because they're Japanese.
Right.
There's this respect that we have for them now, and Britain, one of our greatest allies in the world, and I'm just talking politically and militarily, right? But the fact that they got good TV for the most part. I mean, the last about 3-4 years have been a little rough, but I mean,
Well,
by and large,
It's funny. One thing I am tuning into more lately are Masterpiece and Masterpiece Mystery on PBS, and we do get a lot of the British imports over there.
yeah. I think what I need to do, one of these, I mean, I never would have thought to do this because I know that like right now it's 9 p.m. here. So it's got to be like the middle of the night, early morning over there. Right, bud? But if you're going to be coming over here, maybe one night you come and co-host with me and we just kind of talk about American and TV, American and British TV and, stuff like that. It's 3 a.m. over there. Holy crap, man.
Coupling.
Yes. Bud Boy, have you seen a show? It lasted for 4 series over there. It was called Coupling. It was the series that Stephen Moffat was doing before he did Doctor Who. Just wondering. Anybody in this stream, anyone that hears this, go look for it. Don't watch the abomination, the aborted American attempt at rebooting it. Check out the British series Coupling. It is so funny. And so let me put it to you this way. I in a lot of ways it was similar to Friends, but British. That's the only way better. And what's ironic is Stephen Moffat oversaw the pilot for the American version, and they literally used the same script and the same sets for the pilot episode here in the United States. But the cast had no chemistry, and it was just terrible. It was just terrible. The guy that played Jeff over there, I don't know his name, but he was brilliant. His comedic timing was just spot on. The guy that played him over here in the U.S. was trying to play it like Costanza on Seinfeld, and that is not who the character was, and it was just bizarre. Oh, dude.
Jeffrey.
The fact that you didn't see the U.S. version, consider yourself lucky. I had to look for it on the interwebs, and that's a couple hours of my life I can't get back. It was just terrible.
Did you know that there's a British version of that '70s show?
No,
Which
I did not.
I heard that they were making it at the same time as the American version, but it was more about what was going on in Britain in the '70s.
And this is probably something
United States.
that if Bud Boy is interested and wants to, we can talk about in another stream. But a lot of some of our favorite shows over here from the '70s were Americanized versions of British shows. Three's Company was an American version of a show called Man About the House over in Britain. And it maintained some of the British flavor because they never said they were going down to the bar. They always said they were going down to the pub. And the name of the pub was the Regal Beagle, which was the same name that the show had over, or that the pub had over in the UK version. All in the Family was another. I don't remember what it was called over in the UK, but it was based on a UK, which is hard to believe because it just seems like so American, right? But you know, and of course, for you younger people, The Office. You know, I didn't really like either version of The Office, so I can't really say anything about that.
Well, I did like the American version. I have to watch the British version. Oh, I wanted to answer Bud Boy though. The British version of that 70s show was actually called Days Like These. It had a different title over there. Okay, that's what it was.
Those were the days.
Days Like These. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are some really good British shows, and even my mom will every now and again say, "Oh, you like those British TV shows? Have you seen Last of the Summer Wine or something like that?" Yep, seen every single episode, Mom. I know all about it. It's like, oh, okay.
We got a remake of All Creatures Great and Small recently. They did a new version of that.
You were talking all about that. What did you think of that?
I liked it. You didn't like it?
I didn't see it. I only know of it from you.
I actually wanted to go back now and watch the one with Peter Davidson in it from many years ago.
Yeah.
To kind of contrast it. I thought they did a good job though. If you like animals. Or actually,
no, I love the original. I just never saw this new remake reboot.
Yeah, they had it on PBS this year. People seem to like it. They're doing another season, so we'll see how that turns out. But
yeah, no, I don't know about that one, but yeah, you know, I mean, the Brits got some good TV. Yeah, I don't know about Doctor Who's kind of gone off.
Well, we won't talk about that. Maybe we'll get a Primeval resurgence one day.
Yeah, I saw some of that. That was
Primeval was pretty solid all the way through. They made a Canadian series too, which I didn't like as much, but it wasn't terrible. I'm wondering how it wrapped up.
There was a British show. It was about like a ghost, a werewolf, and a vampire living in a house together.
I remember that one. I forgot what it was called, but I remember that one. Yeah,
I can't remember what it was called. The Americans tried to remake it. And the guy playing the vampire was someone that I really like. He's, done a lot of voices for Star Wars and whatnot, but that wasn't enough yes, Being Human. Thank you. Yeah, the American version and let's face it, there are just some shows that at this point, why are you even remaking it in the United States? Just license the British version and play it. It's perfectly good the way it is. Licensing, though, that's probably the best way to transition to our topic for the night. So the main topic is I wanted to talk about Star Trek. We've talked about, and we have a running series where we're talking about fixing the Universal Monsters franchise, fixing the DC, Warner Brothers shared universe and whatnot. And we're kind of reworking them as a group on MeWe in our own headcanon, what we would do if we could go back in time and do it differently. I don't want to get, beyond. I think one episode is good enough for talking about Star Trek. And there's a reason I'm not doing it over on the Klingon Cleric channel, because as Boomer and I were talking about in the green room, it's pretty contentious in the Star Trek fan community. And I don't want the grief and the hassle. I'd rather, if there's going to be grief and hassle, I'd rather have it over here. I'd rather be more diplomatic over on the Klingon channel. And that's kind of saying something. Diplomatic Klingon.
Yeah. you want to be the Picard of this situation, basically.
The old school Picard.
Okay, yeah, the old school.
Yeah,
I'm curious though. You say there is contention in the Star Trek community. I guess there's the Star Trek community that still wants to support Star Trek.
Yeah, see, and this is the there is in every franchise, right? Mm-hmm. The people I call the popcorn eaters, yes. Right? So they're like, oh, I don't care if it fits the old canon. It's something new. As long as it's got Star Wars on it, I'm going to like it. And it's like, how much of a fan are you if you just don't care? I mean, you're even almost saying you don't care. As long as it says Star Wars, I'll just keep eating my popcorn. Woo! I don't get that. You know.
And then you have the opposite run where it's like you have to like it in this certain way or you're a bad person, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That whole
See,
thing too, yeah.
I'm pretty. You know, we do the geeky geezers, right? We're a couple of old farts as far as this community is concerned. So I'm pretty old school, right? I wasn't alive for the original run of the original series, but I did catch the cartoon series, and I was right there when Next Gen came out. So I was, there from the beginning, right? And I loved it, and I was there to see all the people at. I went to my first Star Trek convention, after Next Gen started, and there were a lot of people that were like, this Next Generation, this isn't my Star Trek. Way back then,
I remember. Here's what it was. I remember I was a big fan. I got introduced to Star Trek really through Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I saw that when I was a kid and didn't quite understand it. But then as I got older, because I was like 5 or 6 when I saw it, and then I got a little older, I'm like, this is actually very interesting because the only other big science fiction property I knew of was probably Star Wars, and maybe occasionally I'd catch some of Doctor Who when it was on, but I wasn't even a huge fan of that when I was really little. But one thing, so I got to know Star Trek through the movies, and then I would try and catch old episodes of the show. I did remember Nickelodeon did repeats of the cartoon series as well, so I would catch those when I could, because I still related it back to Star Trek too, but that was my starting point for Star Trek. And then I remember they were announcing Star Trek The Next Generation. Remember that? Encounter at Farpoint premiere?
Yep.
And I'm seeing a bunch of things on there that are bothering me straight away when I'm a kid, okay?
You know what? Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. But first, I want to drop a link for Bud Boy Productions. That's a link to a MeWe group that I started specifically for the Star, because you mentioned Star Wars. You said you didn't care for Star Wars, Disney Star Wars. I started a group specifically for, the fans strike back against Disney Star Wars. And we chat and commiserate. And I share a lot of Midnight's Edge and Stephanie Janicek videos on there and whatnot. If you want to come by and join us, awesome to have you. But you're right. We're talking about Star Trek. So Star Trek The Next Generation, well, the first thing that got me about Star Trek The Next Generation was that theme music. And where does that theme music come from? It comes from the motion picture.
And I hadn't seen the motion picture at that point yet.
Oh, I see. So as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, I know that theme. You know?
It's a great theme. It's a great Jerry Goldsmith score for that movie as well, yeah. And I was fine with the theme song. I was fine.
So I liked the idea of Q. Let's face it, John Delancey, right? I mean, you and I, we grew up with 70s TV. And John Delancey, you go back and you watch $6 Million Man, you watch The Incredible Hulk, you watch... he was in a lot of those shows.
Oh, yeah.
He was very, very young at the time, but that's where he got his start, is in those shows. And a great guy in person, too, by the way. I was at a convention. I've told this story, but I've mentioned the Babylon 5 people and Mark Hamill. It was this convention here in Chicago called the Big Bang. We all called it the Big Bust. It was a terribly run convention. And the fans were put out. The stars were all put out. But the stars really shined because they came out and they knew that the fans were having a bad time. There was this situation where there were certain events that were promised at ticket price, that there were going to be these, I guess nowadays at conventions, you'd call them premium, like backstage pass type things to the stars. And the stars had not been told about that, and it wasn't put on their itineraries. So they weren't prepared.
Oh no.
So each one of the stars, once they found out, said, well, I'm sorry, I missed the thing, but they all did their own thing separately. So like John Delancey, after hours for the convention, like the convention goes up to say 8:00, like 9:00, he went down to the main auditorium, sat in the bleachers and said to any people that were there, hey, I'm just sitting here. You want to come chat with me? Go call your friends. We'll have an impromptu Q&A session.
Oh, how cool.
Right? Right? You know, I mean, Bill Mummy, who was in Babylon 5 at the time, because he was traveling around with his band, he was in a band, I guess.
Cool. Okay.
He put on an impromptu show with his band in the pub that was attached to the convention center, free to convention attendees, just cuz, you know. And Bob O'Reilly, you know, Gowron, the Klingon chancellor,
Yeah.
the Klingons were all told, and we were there as Klingons. You know, we were the Klingon group, the Chicago Klingon group, was actually doing security for the convention. We were told that they were going to do this special thing where he was going to do an inspection of the troops and so on and so forth. And I even built a scale model of our ship, the Chicago IKV Hoshtam, that we were going to present to Robert O'Reilly. Well, he didn't know anything about it. And so he, during his Q&A, he said, look, I just heard about this. I didn't know about it. It wasn't scheduled, but I want my Souvui on stage right now. And every Klingon jumped up, got in line. And he says, and you know, you picture it. Remember, he's not in any makeup. He's not in costume because at the time he was still under license. He wasn't allowed to do that. And he does that thing with his eyes. You know?
Yeah, a great expressive face.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And he's like, he goes, now these are warriors. And everyone starts cheering. And it was a great time. And I presented him with the model. And he broke character for a moment. He was like, this is awesome. He's like, oh, you honor me. But for that one moment, it's like, wow, I really touched him, you know? And it was a great time. So that's an example of some of these. There was a Creation Con where I met Jonathan Frakes. This was actually my first convention. He was my first celebrity. Okay. I was in the front row. He was doing his Q&A. And I don't remember what the question was that I asked him, but I remember it was in regards to balancing personal life with, you know, a full-time, you know, I mean, the dedication, learning your lines, all the special effects, all the stuff you do for Star Trek. How does that impact your personal life? And he mentioned his wife at the time, his wife now, Jeannie Francis. I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, hey, watch it. I'm like, sorry. And I went up to him and shook his hand afterwards. I was just joking around. I didn't mean it. He goes, it's fine. I know it was just a bit. I'm like, this is a good guy, you know? Mm-hmm. I mean,
I was only at one convention myself. I met James Doohan, though. He was at the convention I was at.
Nanette and I had dinner with him one time.
Oh, excellent.
We were doing security for a different Creation Con, and he got the staff together. Everyone who was on staff. We went out to dinner. We had to buy our own dinner, but he bought the booze, which is good because he drank about 90% of it. He was pretty typecasted as a drinker,
man.
let me tell you. And he told some great stories. So the whole story about him, you know, serving in the war, losing a finger, all that kind of stuff, I heard it first directly from him.
Wow.
Yeah. He also hit on the wife of the head of security, and that was pretty awkward. Yeah, but you know, when you've had a couple drinks, I totally understand. But yeah, we were there when Walter Koenig, he was here in Chicago, and we were doing security duty for him as well. And Nanette and I were on door duty in the main auditorium, and things were running late. And we kept sending a runner back saying, what's going on? And we kept getting back, hold them as long as you can, keep stalling. Turns out he had a heart attack.
Oh my goodness.
And he wasn't going to be going on stage, so we had to call an ambulance for him, and we had to make that announcement. And so that night, on the news, it comes out. I'm like, yeah, I already knew that.
Oh wow.
But yeah,
That's too bad.
We were also at DeForest Kelly's last convention that he did. His health was, he was having some real bad problems with the arthritis. So what he would do is he would sign autographs in advance, and he'd do like a couple a day for weeks before a convention, and then they'd just be handed out to everyone as they walked in. And so he didn't do an actual signing; he just did a Q&A. And I'm like, geez, that's more than enough. That's amazing that he's even coming out for these things.
Wow.
So yeah, we've had some really great experiences with the stars. Some of them just really appreciate their fans, and I feel like and if I was to say, my two favorites have to be Jonathan Frakes and Robert O'Reilly.
Cool.
Definitely. And the only reason that I don't say J.G. Hertzler, because I've never met him personally,
Okay.
but all of the indirect contact I've had with him, seems like a great guy too.
Cool.
You notice I do tend towards the Klingon.
Nothing wrong with that. I don't know what like I said, I was only ever at the one Star Trek convention I went to, but
And where you met James Doohan.
where I met James Doohan, and they had very expensive tricorders that I wanted to buy, but you're a kid and you have no money, so I bought some.
Well,
some
let me tell you, when I was at a convention my freshman year in college, and I used a large percentage of my book money to buy a lightsaber. It was an actual Graflex, and at the time it was $300.
Wow.
That would be a good price today. Finding an original Graflex is almost impossible. But what do we have today? We have incredible licensed, knockoffs.
Well, there you go.
Hey, Trey from Max World Entertainment. Netter, if you get an opportunity, can you drop the link for Max World Entertainment? So glad you stopped on by. I think that is actually a perfect opportunity for me to share that, I am not here to bash what I hate. We really are promoting the things that we love, as Trey, requests us to do and commends us to do. But we are going to talk about some things about Star Trek that have been a little bit challenging for the fans these days, and why it is, and why it's not all just, complainy, but some business things behind the scenes that are the real reason why.
Now, the reason I did bring up TNG originally was that TNG had a rough first season. Let's not try and
Rough
sugarcoat
2
it.
seasons, I'm going to say.
I would argue even season 2 things started to get a little better. Didn't we at least get introduced to the Borg in season 2?
I got 3 words for you.
Yes.
Shades of Grey. Thank you, Netter.
What episode was that one again?
That was I think it was the last episode of season 2, which was a clip episode.
Oh yeah, no clip episodes. No.
You don't do, no, I don't have a problem with a clip episode.
I do.
Just not, bear with me, Trey. I think you'll appreciate what I have to say. And if you want, I'll send you the link if you want to jump in here with me too. But my thought is, if you're going to do a clip show, that's the kind of thing you do in like your 4th, 5th, preferably 7th season, right? Where you have lots and lots of things to draw on. And the problem with a clip episode is they're doing it because they're doing it on the cheap. A good clip episode is when you draw clips from old episodes and then film new episodes. So like if they had filmed something from when Riker was a little boy, special for that episode, that would have been great. Of course, that defeats the whole purpose of why, you know what? I'm just going to drop it here. Who's gonna come into the stream besides, somebody that I actually invite, right?
Anyway,
besides, I don't actually have to let somebody in.
But
so.
I remember that first season. Wesley annoyed me as all get out. he became more tolerable as the show went on, but I remember getting really taken aback by seeing a Klingon on the.
If you want to join us, Trey, I just dropped the link there for you, the StreamYard link. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, it's all right. I mean, I remember being very alarmed by seeing a Klingon on the bridge of the Enterprise, because for me that was a bridge too far. Now, to be fair, they do explain Worf later on and explain that he's kind of in exile and all this. Okay, this is all making sense now. But when I first saw him, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
Well, and this is where there's a lot of things about Next Gen that taught me to, give it a chance, right? Yeah. The Klingon on the bridge, just the changes of the uniforms. There was the new protocols, all that kind of stuff. I think the biggest one that I didn't struggle with, but I saw a lot of people struggling with, was when they said that Guinan was going to, when they were bringing in Whoopi Goldberg. You got to remember, Whoopi Goldberg, before she was Guinan, had done all comical roles.
Like Sister Act.
Yeah. And what was the one with the dinosaur and all that kind of stuff? Really goofy stuff,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So that whole idea just made no sense. And I remember seeing a flyer with this was, in the age before there was Photoshop and interwebs and stuff. It was literally a black and white Xeroxed flyer sitting on a table at a convention with a picture of like the Star Trek uniform from the neck down with Whoopi Goldberg's head with the dreadlocks on it, and saying, contact Paramount, say no to Whoopi Goldberg. And I'm like, we don't even know what role she's going to play yet. She might be an alien. We may not even recognize her, whatever. And sure enough, it was a very clever alien. Yes, Theodore Rex. Thank you, Bud Boy Productions. See, he's our movie guy. That's why I'm glad he's here. He knows his stuff. But Guinan turned out to be a brilliant character. In fact, in retrospect, I think she got a lot of the character development that Deanna Troi should have had.
Yeah.
But that's easy to say in retrospect. Having the bartender being the wise one, I kind of get that. It kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah. And she gave Worf prune juice.
It's a warrior's drink.
I'm sorry. I thought that was funny. And it
was especially funny for the Klingon fans, because even though Klingons are omnivorous, we tend to think of them as being very meat heavy in their diets. So you want something that's going to make you a little bit more regular? Prune juice. Yeah. But at a lot of the Klingon gatherings I go to, they serve prune juice and vodka. It's a great drink.
Well, I forgot to mention Wolf Tim Media is in the stream too. He's listening at work, so.
Oh, hey, Wolfie.
Don't let us get you into trouble.
Yeah, right. I mean, you got to keep those cinemas going because, well, frankly, we need them.
We do. But what was I going to say, though? But yeah, and TNG got better, okay?
Right. So it wasn't until after the second season that, well, let's back up, right? They gave Gene Roddenberry like almost carte blanche. And there's a lot of things that Gene did that were kind of well-intentioned, but not necessarily well executed, a lot of the cringe of the first two seasons, you kind of got to blame on Gene Roddenberry,
Some of the cringe in motion picture I blame on Gene Roddenberry too. There's that last line where McCoy said, "Oh, well, I helped deliver a baby," and referring to Deckard, and I'm like, I would have loved to have been in a first screening audience of that to see if the audience would have howled at the
just
screen.
Groaned, yeah.
I really, I'm curious, but yeah.
After the second season, the network kind of was like, Gene, we appreciate you, but we're going to kind of take over creative control here, and we're going to keep you on as an executive producer. And so that's where the things change. And people like Rick Sternbach, Mike Okuda, and so forth took over. And that's where you get all your continuity from. You start getting the technical manual, you get the chronology and so forth. And you start going, wow, now they're paying attention to this stuff. Now, I mean, before that, our very first throwback to the original series is the first 1 hour episode, The Naked Now, which all it was is a reboot, rehash sequel of The Naked Time from the original series. And I'm like, if this is what this series is going to be, this is not going to hold me. But it developed and it went up and down. There were good episodes, there were bad episodes. And because of the episodic nature of it, each episode stood on its own. So it was, okay.
All great television series have their bad episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Big fan of Batman the Animated Series. There's some stinkers in there, though. Okay,
and that kind of established that you're not going to like every episode, but the episodes you do like are going to be incredible. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, and there are some real standouts. I mean, if you think of the original series, you think of City on the Edge of Forever, All Our Yesterdays, and so forth. You think about Next Gen, you think about Measure of a Man, mm-hmm. you think of The Offspring, you think of Yesterday's Enterprise, The Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2. Those are some great episodes.
It's considered TNG is the finale for TNG is considered one of the best series finales ever made. Actually,
I would argue that it's not perfect, but
Yeah.
it was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was very good. And let me tell you, I just mentioned The Offspring. And we're going to come back to this in a little bit. That
Mm-hmm.
is probably my favorite episode.
Okay.
That, in a lot of ways, couples with Measure of Man, where it takes what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be sentient, right? And what does it mean to have respect for a new life form that might be an artificially created life form?
Mm-hmm.
When people talk about Star Trek, and well, it was always woke, it always had a message. This is the kind of thing they talk about. But the thing about about those message episodes, they got their message across on a heart level, not on a preachy way, but I'm telling you, I cannot watch the episode, The Offspring, without being absolutely in tears by the end of it. I mean, ugly crying, swollen eyes crying.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Honestly, when I see that, I'll tell you, it gets me every single time. That I can't cry because he has no emotion. I can't feel. I will feel for both of us, Father.
Oh, that rips your heart out right there.
Thank you for my life. Thank you for dancing and kisses
Max,
and this and that. Yeah, what's Trey saying? Is he giving me grief?
he's saying does not think that. Oh, what am I?
All Marine was one of the best Deep Space Nine episodes. I'm sorry, man. I don't remember. You got to keep. Okay, I was going to get to this when I got to Deep Space Nine. I've probably only seen about 75% of the Deep Space Nine episodes. Because unfortunately here in Chicago, we carried Deep Space Nine on WGN. That meant that almost every week it was interrupted by a ball game.
Deep Space Nine is a show I really need to go back from the beginning and rewatch.
Yep, I do too.
I have it available. I am a little disappointed it never really got a true HD.
Oh, Al Moraine, count to 4. Al Moraine, then 3 more. That's the one where they were playing the game in the first season. Yeah, that was dumb. That was pretty dumb. But hey, it was ambitious though. They took a chance. They tried something.
Yeah. Deep Space Nine I found fascinating because you used to get to know a lot of the aliens. You got to know alien species more on that than you did on TNG, because TNG is more about the human experience.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump to Deep Space Nine. Yeah. Deep Space Nine was a spin-off that had a completely different idea. It went for the dark gritty, right?
Yeah.
And it actually started a little bit slow in that regard. It took, the big Klingon Dominion War, right, to really give us a war story. I don't know if we needed a Star Trek war story, but it worked. It really did. But, man, talk about some incredible, if you will, message stories, right? About war and warfare and the morality of, hey, we've got a virus that can wipe out the whole race that we're fighting. Well, wait a minute. That's not morally right. I mean,
and this is the Federation.
Yeah, exactly.
Some dark version, some dark Spec Ops, which I thought was good for that story. I got annoyed when people keep running back to that now. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Unfortunately, it was like opening a doorway that now you
that shouldn't have been
close.
opened.
Yeah.
I got.
Well, no, I would argue it was good to open it and deal with it, but the fact that they were like, okay, let's just now we can do whatever. No, that's.
Yeah.
You didn't even learn the lesson of the episodes that you used it,
Yes,
kind
I
of a
mean, the
thing.
point is that you understand that in wartime, it's anyway. But
I'll tell you what, Trey. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I do. I agree with you. But honestly, if Al Moraine was the worst episode that we got from Deep Space Nine, I'd
That's
say
still
they're
pretty
doing
good.
pretty good. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't like I'm never watching this damn show again. It was meh. And meh isn't bad. I can live with it. It may not be the one that I always want to go back to, but I'll be honest with you, it did make me think, could I recreate this game and maybe do like each level has like a video game component to it for the
There you go.
immersion of it? I mean, that's the kind of stuff I was thinking, man. There was something in that.
Okay.
You're right, though. I'm surprised they've never even touched on it in Star Trek Online. That would be a good place to deal with that kind of stuff. But
and then after Deep Space Nine, we got Voyager. Remember Voyager?
yeah, and I remember at the time being, oh, great, we got Battlestar Star Trek here, because it was basically the story of Battlestar Galactica. They're trying to reach Earth.
I thought Lost in Space. That's
Well,
what I was
okay,
thinking.
okay,
No, but
I
no,
see
I
that
see your
too.
Battlestar reference too, though, because they're trying to get home, and that's what they're trying to do in Battlestar Galactica.
But at the same time, as the show went on, I started to appreciate it for what it was too, because I realized, okay, we've had kind of a mainline modern reboot of Star Trek in Next Generation, right? This is just your standard frontline ship in the Federation exploring strange new worlds. We've had, the outpost station in Deep Space Nine on the edge.
edge of the known.
Yeah, the Borderlands
Because of
kind
the
story.
because of the wormhole. Because now that's
Exactly.
completely unknown territory. Okay.
And now we have the Wayfinder, right? The scout ship way out in unknown space without even being able to contact. They're completely cut off from the Federation. It's not like at the end of each episode they could go to a star base and refuel and get supplies, drop off the injured, get new officers. No, you have exactly as many officers as you start with. You have exactly as many shuttles and as much antimatter and all that.
They were
kind of stuff.
chasing after Maquis. They had to integrate them into the crew. Remember that?
And that
Yes.
was your interesting political thing. That kind of flowed over from Deep Space Nine and Next Gen.
A
where
little bit
you-
toward the end of Next Gen, they had that in there too. Yeah.
They definitely dealt with, the Native American story and, having your land taken from you again and again and again. And, does the Federation have a right to decide we're giving away this planet and that means all of the settlers got to leave? Hey, wait a minute. Don't we get a say in this? There was a lot of very interesting political commentary there. And they never came at you preachy and saying this is what's right and this is what's wrong. It was very ambiguous and you could kind of see both sides of it. That was a good thing about it.
Yeah, it's about being topical and there's bringing it up and you, the audience, decide where you fall. I mean, when you're having treaties with people, sometimes land gets given up. That happens. That happened at the end of World War II when they were divvying up Europe
The
between.
one thing that I feel was a missed opportunity with the character of Chakotay, I would have loved to have had just, even if it was just a throwaway line, some sort of a reference that acknowledged Miramani's people from the original series.
Oh, interesting.
As if, like, Chakotay's tribe knew about them and they, honored the whatever, like, we're not going to interfere. We're going to let them live their life, but
Right.
we know about them, and, they worship the same sky spirits, because he brings that up later and stuff. And that would have been, I thought, really pretty cool. But, Bud Boy Productions, I had a huge crush on Janeway when I was in my teens. Dude. When I saw her the first time, I immediately said, hey, that's Kate Mulgrew from the Adventures of Remo Williams.
I remember that movie. Yeah.
Yep. I think I did a rewatch of that on my channel, didn't I?
I don't know
If I
you did or
didn't,
not.
if I didn't, somebody did.
Yeah, I don't remember that one, but maybe you did.
But that was, she was, when I saw her in Remo Williams and then I heard she was cast in, as Janeway, I was like, oh, if she plays that same character, basically, that would be perfect. And let me tell you, she basically did play the same character.
All right.
She was also Mrs. Columbo, but I didn't watch that.
Right. And then we had, after Voyager ended, I thought it had a pretty good finale too, actually, as I remember.
Yeah, it seemed a little Deus Ex Machina, all tied up, but yeah, it was still pretty good.
No, but I like the idea of the future Janeway saying,
Yeah.
I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the time travel, all this other stuff. I'm getting my ship home.
It's certainly. Oh, go ahead.
It's like a Kirk thing. Kirk might do something like that,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I think it certainly did fit with the theme of the 7 seasons, right? Because you saw her constantly wrestling with the morality and the regulations versus, the existential need, right?
Yes.
And she made her decision, and we saw there was actually another Federation ship.
Yes, that was
that was like the, and that also seemed to me to be like the Phoenix from Battlestar Galactica, right? Or was it? No,
Right.
was it the Phoenix? It wasn't the Phoenix.
It was
What was the name of the other
ship,
Battlestar?
I forgot, but it was
There was Galactica, and then there was the other ship,
the one that was run by
Ensign Rowe. from
Ensign
Star-
Rowe. Yeah.
yeah.
She was also on Homicide. I'm trying to remember what her name was, but Battlestar Galactica teach other
but
battles.
yeah, it was basically, we're the good guys, and they're, there but for the grace of God go I, the ones that have given up on morality and just whatever it takes to survive. And you don't,
yeah.
and it's hard to judge them too harshly because, walk a mile in somebody's shoes. Again, that moral ambiguity and seeing both sides and having to, evaluate it, right? And eventually Janeway's like, F it, I want to get my crew home.
Yep.
And I guess this is another place I want to make the plug and say Star Trek Online did a great job of picking up a lot of those threads and running with them. It's clear that the people that write the storylines for Star Trek Online are real Star Trek fans that are going, every single episode of every single Star Trek has implications that we need to be mindful of. And I love that about them. And the fact that they have found ways to take completely disparate storylines and weave them together into a tapestry is just absolutely brilliant. But that's not really what I wanted to get into tonight. You were about to make the transition. Go ahead.
And then we get Enterprise, right?
Yep.
And
Look,
that,
a lot of people have problems with Enterprise. I really, really liked it.
That's the one I'm least familiar with because I didn't watch too much of that when it was on. I probably should have, but I think I
That
was burned
one-
out on Star Trek at that point.
Ah,
In fact, I
see-
remember a lot of people at the time were saying they really should have waited a year or two before trying another Star Trek series, even if it was a prequel series. Because I wonder if they were
Maybe.
exhausted from just going through Voyager, finishing up Deep Space Nine. They should have maybe taken a break and rebooted
And-
recouped.
Enterprise gets me to, I think, for me, what my main point is tonight. I think all of the problems that we have with Star Trek as fans, I would say 99 times out of 100, it's not necessarily the writers. Oftentimes, it's the studio behind it that are setting up roadblocks for them and really setting them up for failure and mandating things that the fans don't want and the writers and the showrunners don't want. But for whatever reason, the powers that be think this is a good idea, you know? And there was a lot of things that they did in Enterprise that the writers were just like, this isn't good. This isn't going to work. For example, that whole time travel, temporal Cold War thing, that went on way too long. You know, if they had done it for just a season or two and been done with it, it would have been fine. But it just kept going and going.
That and the one with the Jem'Hadar.
No. We're talking about Enterprise.
Oh,
You know, with Tucker and
got it.
yeah. What was the Brit's name that you liked?
Dig Elf,
No. That was Deep Space Nine too. Reed.
oh,
Malcolm Reed. Yeah.
Dominic Keating.
Dominic Keating. Yeah, your boyfriend. I know. Come on.
I like the accent.
I know. You like the accent. But Bud Boy Productions is in the house, so you know.
I
well-
get to listen to him speak then.
Yes. Well, you gotta listen to Latino Slant if you want to hear. Or maybe in a week or two we'll get Bud Boy on over here if he's willing to.
And then of course
to join
my
me.
accent will come out because my mom.
Because your mom in Lancashire, I know. Anyway, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the show. So
Enterprise,
so-
yes.
Enterprise. So I think the biggest problem that fans had with that was, well, this is a prequel for an Enterprise that, you know, has never been mentioned before. Yeah, okay, so what? You know, so it wasn't in the span of all the different pictures that were in the, you know, the gallery in Star Trek the Motion Picture, you know, that showed all of the ships called Enterprise. Oh well, you know, we've never seen that Vulcan-looking ship either that was apparently called Enterprise. But you know, what do you want? You know, the Phoenix wasn't in. Well, the Phoenix wasn't called Enterprise, but still, you know, I mean, there's, you know, and there's a buddy of mine who's sometimes on the channel, Skipper Kenner. He had a theory. He called it what the spot theory. Okay, so Data had Data's cat theory. Data had a cat named Spot, right? In the Next Generation, and in one episode it was a male cat. In another episode, it was a female cat of a completely different breed. And the reason that was because they needed the cat to be pregnant and have kittens, you know, as an important plot point. Mm-hmm. So they retconned it. And his theory is, well, in between those two episodes, there was Yesterday's Enterprise, a time travel episode that fundamentally changed history. When they put everything back, everything went back mostly right, but minor changes were made, such as Data just had a different cat all that time. So instead of having a male cat of this, you know, type, he had a female cat of this type. And any other tiny minor continuity errors you find, that's why. He calls it the Data's cat theory. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that, because if you really dig into the time travel of Star Trek, you realize, yeah, there are some interesting paradoxes that come up, and the implied other histories that are out there, right? Because of time travel. So we know that the world where Tasha Yar went back to is in a divergent timeline. We know it's out there. We don't visit it again, but it's out there somewhere. And they do touch on that in Star Trek Online, but that's
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
As they say.
I just like plugging the game that I like playing so much. But yeah, Bud Boys Productions says the butterfly effect. Yeah, even when you change everything back and you think everything's perfect, there's always going to be something that's a little bit off. And in fact, that the butterfly that idea, there's actually two butterfly references, and people tend to confuse them. The butterfly effect of chaos theory is not the same that most people think of when they think about time travel. When they think about time travel and infer the butterfly effect, they're referring to a classic sci-fi story called The Sound of Thunder. And in that story, people were going back in time to the Cretaceous period, I think. To hunt dinosaurs, okay? But in order to not mess up history, they could only walk on a path that was like a levitating path that didn't touch the ground, that was set up for them. And people had gone there previously and found like a T-Rex that was about to be killed by a falling tree or something like that. You can shoot that T-Rex right there because it's going to die anyway or whatever, anything to, not mess with history. And what ends up happening is somebody leaves the path and steps on a butterfly.
Yes.
And is running from a T-Rex or something, gets back to the present and finds that the present looks mostly the same. But when he goes to read the sign on the wall, everything is, you know how English is, you could spell English phonetically and you could substitute C's with K's and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's how everything was. Everything was differently spelled. And when he looked at the news, he saw that a different political party had won the election. So things had changed,
Yeah, and not to spoil, but that happened in the finale of Primeval. Somebody went through one of those things, and the dinosaur that was messing around, and it changed.
I would have been surprised.
It changed the present. It changed the present.
I'd have been surprised if they didn't draw.
They touched on that
inspiration from that.
But it's one of the reasons why on that show, if they could avoid killing the dinosaurs after the game, that they would try to avoid killing them because they just want them to go back through because they're trying not to change things. You understand?
Right.
Obviously,
right.
if a dinosaur is going to attack a person present, they're going to shoot it. But they're
this is why I
get it back.
This is why I spent a whole year doing time travel movie. Watch parties and whatnot, because I was highlighting how the way we don't know if time travel is possible. And there are a lot of theories about if it's possible, how does it work? Is it linear? Is it multiple universes? What is it? And if you're going to write a time travel story, you kind of need to think it through. And I've seen time travel stories that are actually quite brilliant, and they're the easier ones to write. It's a predestination paradox concept. You can't change history because anything that you went back in time and did, you were already a part of history. You go back in time and try to kill the German guy with the bad mustache, you're doomed to fail. Or you're going to kill the wrong person and somebody else is going to take his place, and he's the real person that you thought you were trying to kill.
It's funny. The Command and Conquer computer games, I think the Red Alert series starts out with Einstein basically inventing a time machine and going back and killing the guy with the mustache, okay?
Yeah.
The trouble is that changes history, and now we're in a nasty war with the Soviet Union. Do you understand? And it's like...
If it's linear, right?
Yeah.
If you actually can go back and change time.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I was saying, there are some that say, no, you can't. If you go back in time, you...
Something's going to prevent you from doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. There was actually a Twilight Zone where it was kill the guy with the bad mustache. And a person sacrifices herself to kill baby Adolf. But then in so doing, the nanny realizes that, you know, the father's going to be so distraught that she kidnaps another baby and puts
There
him
you
in his
go.
place.
Funny.
And it turns out that is the
That's
individual that grows up to be the bad guy.
Yeah, Harry Potter follows the same rules for time travel. You
Right.
can time travel, but you're going back is all part of the same thread. Do you understand?
If time travel had been a bigger part of that one film, that would have been one of my rewatches because they did such an excellent job of it. Where things happen that are a little confusing at the time, but then later on in the future, he realizes, oh, I'm the person that did that thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
it's
Star Trek,
interesting.
but Star Trek has had different theories of time travel at different
I know.
times.
I know. People get angry about that too.
But they've been consistent within their own,
Right.
you know. So there is the possibility of time travel that results in another universe or going to another universe or whatever the case is. There is changing it and then having to change it back so that you can get back to where you were, so on and so forth. There is Mike Okuda in his chronology does a very... Actually, I can't remember if it was in the chronology or if it was in the encyclopedia. One of the two has a whole appendix related to alternate universes. And it says, look, in this episode, you know, this happened and then they put time back. But we have to assume that there's an alternate universe where that didn't happen and, you know, this. You know, so we have to assume that there's still a Star Trek universe out there where, you know, the Germany won World War II because Edith Keeler, you know, kumbaya'd us out of the war, you know, and all that kind of stuff. A great one was the episode Parallels, where, in fact, I think this picture of Worf, I think, comes from that episode.
Is that the one where they run into all the different enterprises from different universes? All
yes, because Worf is coming back from a Battle tournament on Farkas 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he goes through an anomaly or something, and he keeps ending up on different enterprises, you know, and he's got a different uniform, and different people have different uniforms. He ends up on one where, I mean, some of it, this is what I'm talking about, like a clip episode that wasn't a clip episode. He ends up on an enterprise where, what's his name? Riker is the captain.
Right.
Because they didn't get Picard back in the Best of Both Worlds.
The Borg were winning, basically wiping out the...
No. They had won,
Oh,
but they had to
won.
sacrifice Picard to do it.
But wasn't there another
There
ship?
was another
Yes.
ship that's trying to prevent them from separating the universes, because their Riker was the captain and his world was the worst of all worlds, where you know the Borg were winning and they were the last, and we won't go back. And it's like, oh my God, you know, that is some pretty heavy duty stuff. And Worf goes through, in one universe he has a relationship with Deanna Troi, in another world he doesn't, in another one he's got kids with her or something. It's like bizarre stuff. I mean, so he realizes, and it's a very interesting thing, because anybody who looks at their own life and goes, geez, you know, what would have happened if I had turned left instead of right? What if I just referenced a Doctor Who episode. I think it was called Left Turn. You know, if the companion had turned right instead of left on a particular day, she wouldn't have met the Doctor, and all these different things wouldn't have happened, you know. And it's, I mean, that's good storytelling, you know. That is some good storytelling that really honored everything that it's dependent on the stories that came before it, you know? So
Enterprise ends.
Enterprise
Early, too.
time travel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enterprise. Well, because what happened was they only got 4 seasons, right? And it started getting really good in its 4th season, but it was too little too late. The fans had already had as much as they could take of the temporal Cold War. And yeah, I mean, this whole thing with the Xindi and the Xindi weapon, the mini Death Star that, cuts a swatch out of Florida and, kills all those people. It was very 9/11-ish.
Right.
It was very clear that's what they were going for. There were some great storylines there, but they were really messing with canon, and it was really starting to tick off the fans, and they were getting annoyed. Plus, they were tantalizing us with things that very much complemented canon, leading up to the Romulan War that we know about but had never seen before.
Right.
We had the formation of the Federation. We saw conflict between the Andorians and the Vulcans, and the humans being the people in between that were like, hey guys, can't we all just get along? And we definitely see the seeds of what was going to become the Federation. And fans were clamoring for that. We really, really wanted to see that. As a side note, what I do have to say, what we didn't get from Enterprise, what we expected to get from it had it continued, the fans are doing themselves. Mm-hmm. Go subscribe to Max World Entertainment. Netter dropped the link. It's still on screen. He features a lot of these fan filmmakers that, definitely have thought through if Enterprise had continued, in that era, those storylines, there are still stories being told by fans out there that are definitely worth checking out. But yeah, and then when they finally decided to wrap up 3 seasons of Temporal Cold War, they did it in such a ham-fisted way. Zzz, rewind, okay, it's been undone. And it's like, so we just wasted 3 seasons, right? I mean, what the heck? Now we're going to start the real show? And I think that's it, because it had already been canceled. So I don't even want to talk about the last episode. Most fans just agree that's non-canon. There's a novelization that actually goes back and rewrites that last episode.
Good.
For those of you that don't know, the last episode of Star Trek Enterprise is very easy to write off because it's bookended as being a holodeck story that takes place on the Enterprise, being run by Commander Riker during the episode The Phoenix. And it F's with the continuity of Enterprise and Next Generation's episode The Phoenix. They're not compatible. It does not work.
Yeah,
it was an insult to the fans of Enterprise, to the stars on Enterprise, and even Jonathan Frakes has said, I didn't really feel comfortable doing it. But
okay, it was a big mistake. That was and that was Berman, I guess, because I don't know.
This is one of those examples where I can't put too much blame on him. It was kind of, he was pressured into it by the studio,
Yeah. And so
and they were wrapping it up anyway, and I think everyone kind of stopped caring at that point.
And we had the TNG movies. I don't know if we want to spend too much time talking about those, except for Nemesis. Data gets supposedly killed off. Yeah.
The movies, in retrospect, even the movies that I didn't care for still are actually not that bad. I will defend Star Trek V. I will defend Star Trek Nemesis, and I'll explain why. And you guys are all probably getting sick of hearing this, but it's because of Star Trek Online. They've gone back and picked up the loose plot threads and burned off the edges and smoothed it out and made it a whole lot better.
Okay.
To the point that I can look back at it and go, okay. It's not really Nemesis is not how I wanted to see the next gen crew go out, but it definitely could have been worse, and in hindsight, it's better than I remember it being.
So then Star Trek goes dormant for years.
Yeah,
And then we have J.J. Abrams announcing he's going to be doing Star Trek. And that time I thought, okay, this could be good because J.J. Abrams was on a roll with TV. He was producing Lost, which was one of the most popular television series ever. That was like huge deal. He was doing Fringe, which I still consider to be one of the best science fiction television series ever did. I mean, he produced it. I mean,
Fringe was brilliant. Fringe was his high watermark, I gotta say.
I am starting to wonder how much of this is due to Abrams or other people working on those series too.
So this is where I get into don't mistake this as a defense of J.J. Abrams.
Okay.
But this is where I think a lot of people misplace their blame. Okay, there's a lot of blame put on J.J. Abrams, Bad Robot. We hear about a lot of talk about the Wakosos and the, preachy, change history, reboot everything kind of mentality. But I think the bigger problem is what I alluded to with some of the problems with the TV series prior to this, and that's the intervention of studios. Okay, now I am not going to get into a long history. If you want, go check out Midnight's Edge. They have some great videos talking about the history of this, but there is a schism between CBS and Paramount that has gone like this. Right? They've separated and come together and separated and come together. And this whole idea of separating the movies from TV, which you can't do. You have a combined continuity. Trying to split them is like is like Solomon trying to split the proverbial baby. You can't do it.
That's a good analogy, actually. I do like that.
and an even better analogy that's right between those two is and this is why I'm going to say it's not just Star Trek. Over with Warner Brothers, DC Comics, Superman. A lot of the problems that we've had with Superman, the lack of the trunks and the changing the costume and Smallville and Superboy and movies, TV, New 52, all this kind of stuff, things that have happened in the comics. It's because of a lawsuit between the families of Siegel and Schuster and DC Comics. And there was a landmark intellectual property case that tried to split the proverbial baby and said, look, anything that Siegel and Schuster created, prior to this date is theirs, and anything that DC Comics creates after that. So one of the big problems was Superboy. Clark Kent, young Clark Kent as Superboy, living in Smallville, but still wearing a costume and doing superheroic things. That was all Siegel and Schuster. So when it came time to do things like Smallville,
we don't get Superboy. You can't put on the costume.
Exactly. And when John Byrne rebooted him in the late 80s, early 90s, same thing. He didn't have a career as Superboy. He didn't really have his powers until he moved off and went off to Metropolis and became Superman. So they purposely did away with that. And in order to maintain their continuity of having a Superboy who could go off and do things with the Legion of the Superheroes and fit that role, they created a whole new Superboy. And
the one from Cadmus Labs, that one.
Exactly. Who was he was basically Lex Luthor and Superman's love child. I mean, if you really wanted to dig into what he really is.
I remember how they targeted that, not to get too much off on a tangent with Superman, but I remember on Smallville they introduced him and it says, "Hey, I'm like your son brother." And he interrupts.
Exactly.
Whereas
I'm like your
Young
son
Justice,
brother.
Like on Young Justice and on Young Justice, Batman's like, Clark, you got to deal with this kid, and he's like, he's your son, and Clark gets all mad. And he gets it. No, he's not. He gets all mad. And here's what I have to say: Bruce Wayne or Batman handled that wrong. It's really his brother. That's how they should approach that. Okay, this is your brother. He's not your son. I understand how that might freak out even good.
I mean,
good Superman.
I can kind of see it both ways, to be honest
Go with
you.
the brother. He's a clone. Anyway, let's move on. Anyway, we were
Well-
talking about the first Abrams Star Trek movie, but Bud Boy has a
So
comment.
so this is what I was getting to.
Mhm.
And again, Midnight's Edge has a great, talk about this. Now there are people that are diehard, support Star Trek no matter what, no matter how bad it is, whatever, that will always come to the defense and say, this is not true, this is rumor, this is how business works, okay? There is, in order for J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot. Oh, welcome to the stream, Melissa Harris. Glad that you're here. Yes, Connor, technically Superman's son, John Kent, older brother or uncle in a way. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So, in order for you got to remember that the license of Star Trek stretches all the way back to Gene Roddenberry's estate. Okay. What was started with the original series. Bad Robot comes along and makes a movie. They are not entitled to the licensing, the product, the action figures and the lunchboxes for anything from the original series, Leonard Nimoy, any of that stuff. Okay. Next Gen, Enterprise, none of that goes to Bad Robot. The only thing Bad Robot can make money off of is anything that's significantly different enough. And people bandy about 20% different. Let's not get hung up on that, because that's probably not written in stone somewhere, but it's a legal precept in intellectual property. Okay, if you are selling a model of the Enterprise, if it looks significantly like the original series Enterprise, that's a licensed product. That's a trademark of CBS. They get that money. And if you're producing it and putting it out there without a license, that's illegal. Okay? You're doing 3D prints or something like that. That's not legal. Okay? So for Bad Robot to make money off of models of the Enterprise, they had to make one that was significantly different, okay? Just like, and I unfortunately have to go back to Superman, DC Comics sued Fawcett Comics over the character of Captain Marvel,
Right, I
Shazam,
remember that. Yes.
because he looked a lot like Superman in their opinion, and the court came down and said, it's not a significant likeness. No, it's just because he can fly and he has a cape is not enough. Okay. So there are very important legal distinctions about what does and does not infringe on trademark. Okay. And so Paramount and CBS had to work those things out. So the uniform had to be different enough, the likeness of the actors and so forth. So this is why it had to be different. This is why it had to be a reboot, and this is why it had to be a completely separate timeline. So
the Kelvin, what they call the Kelvin timeline after the USS Kelvin.
Exactly. And so many people would argue that because of the way the time travel works, the Kelvin, the ship, should exist in both universes because it exists prior to Nemo's ship coming through and, changing history. The place where that breaks down, though, is the fact that apparently things prior to that event seem to have been changed too. Like somehow Khan Noonien Singh became, a British guy when he used to be a
Sikh,
dark-skinned Sikh that had a Spanish accent. I mean, these are historical changes.
I'm going to be blunt. We'll get into Darkness in a minute. The first movie, did we like it? Did we hate it? How did we feel about it? I remember at the time thinking it was fine. I mean, there were some issues, but I didn't hate it.
I have said this about it.
Blockbuster Star Trek.
as an alternate timeline story, it was okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I liked a lot, and I take my grief for saying this, I loved the casting. I don't think there was one person that I didn't like recast, as the main characters of
Okay.
I liked Chris Pine as Kirk.
Yes, he was my favorite of the casting because I think you can't really replace William Shatner, but I think that actor still works as a Kirk.
And
okay,
he didn't try to do a caricature of William Shatner,
which is what I feel.
Played him straight, and he did just fine.
As much as I love Carl Urban, I feel like he is kind of doing a caricature of DeForest Kelley in that.
I can forgive it a little bit.
Okay.
When you consider that he's an actor who's affecting an accent. So he is drawing direct inspiration from DeForest Kelley. He has to. I mean, in order to get the accent, he is manifesting somebody.
Gotcha.
And he's drawing from the character that he's playing, and I think that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
The girl, I can't remember.
Zoe Saldana.
Oh,
yes.
She is amazing, and let me tell you something. I feel she elevated that character.
I think so,
and that's partly her as an actress, but it's also the way she was written. She was written brilliantly.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, let me just say, we always talk about, strong, fierce women, with agency and stuff. Man, I could totally see that Uhura becoming a captain someday.
Sure.
Just saying,
Sulu was fine. I forget the actor who played him.
I thought Sulu was great. Yeah. I thought, Anton Yeltsin, was that his name, who played Chekhov?
Anton Yeltsin, I think his name is,
yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, he was awesome. Talk about getting the role right without directly, drawing from, because as much as I really like Walter Koenig, personally, having met the man, I like him a lot.
Yes.
But his Chekhov was just a tongue-in-cheek.
Of course it was. But think of the time when it was made.
Yes,
I think in some respects, at that time, you had to be a little tongue-in-cheek to have a Russian character. We're in a Cold War with them at that moment in history, so I kind of got why they did it that way. It's like, it's a funny Russian, we can... In the future, everyone's getting along finally. The human race has finally gotten past all the BS. We're finally getting on. I thought that, and then we have Zachary Quinto as Spock, right?
Yeah, Skyler. I mean, that's how I keep thinking of him.
Which,
again, I thought he did an excellent job, but I don't like the way his character was written.
No,
I think that's where we start to fall apart. I am not blaming him in the slightest.
I mean, I kind of think I know what they were trying to go for.
Yeah.
How could these two characters become the best of friends later on in the series that we know? So when they're meeting each other, but he's kind of, I think Red Letter Media pointed out, he's kind of a dick, in those movies. And I don't like him.
And in a lot of ways, in a very illogical way. I respect Spock from the original series.
Yes.
He didn't understand and didn't get along well with either Kirk or McCoy on certain levels. But in his logical reason, he put those things aside because he was who he was, saw past them, which eventually not only made him great friends with both of those two people that he had differences with. Can you imagine that these days? Being friends with people you have differences with and disagree with? Oh my gosh, right? But to the point where by Star Trek VI, he has that conversation with Valeris, where she says something about logic. He goes, logic and logic. Valeris, logic is only the beginning of wisdom.
I like that a lot, too.
He has learned so much. And, jump back to Enterprise real quick. I felt like, what's her name?
T'Pol,
yeah.
T'Pol, okay.
She had that very rigid, time travel is not possible. The Vulcan science community is unanimous about this, and that sounded to me like today when people talk about the settled science. No, that's not how science works. That is not logical. You are actually actively ignoring evidence in front of you because of a preconceived notion. That is not logical, and that there is growth for that character, for the Vulcans, to realize that, yes, logic is good. Logic is important, and it is the cornerstone of their culture. But logic also leads you to be open to the truth. Things that don't seem logical at first, but the evidence says otherwise, you must evaluate, So anyway, yeah. So, and I don't see that. I don't even see that in a primordial way in the Spock that we see in and it makes it very, very difficult. And then as we go into the next movie,
okay, this is where I start to go off.
He does 180, and now he's like best of friends with. It's like, where did that come from?
He's best of friends who sells them out in the beginning for violating the Prime Directive and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Star Trek Into Darkness, I really have a level of despise for that movie. I really don't like it. I can't cut it slack. No. It completely, it's them. What's the worst thing? What is the other thing we were saying the other night, or was it you and I talking, or somebody else? It was like, the problem is they keep trying to redo Wrath of Khan. Maybe it was the guest we had on Daniel's thing. Everyone keeps trying to redo Wrath of Khan, do the reversion of Wrath of Khan, and they keep messing it up. And this, in my opinion, it has Khan in it. No, completely flubbed it. Didn't like it. It brings the Section 13, is that what it's called?
Section 31, I think.
Section 31, okay, yeah. They bring them into it. It's just, no. And I wanted to like the movie.
Yeah.
They ripped off Godfather 3. That one scene. Remember the scene where they're having the meeting in the copter, and it's Benedict Cumberbatch. Now, to be fair, I don't believe he was the original casting choice for that role. I believe they wanted Benicio del Toro, okay? And I think
would have been a good casting.
I suspect he read the script and said no.
That's what Do you know who else I think would have? And you know what? I just keep shipping him for all of my favorite roles that I think call for a suave, good-looking Latin guy, and that's Tony Flags, Antonio Banderas. I think he would have made an excellent because he's tall. You know.
Yeah.
I think he would have worked. A great Khan.
And the thing is that there were other things they could have done. They could have had weren't there other genetically engineered tyrants from that era?
Yes,
why didn't they could have just made Benedict Cumberbatch a different one of them, okay? They encountered a different one.
They could have made him Joaquin, or anyone.
Yes.
It's just
And they kept it secret too. They made it this big secret as to who it was. And I guess
that was a PR nightmare.
And
because that was another
stupid.
This is where I really have problems with J.J. Abrams, because everyone said, "Oh yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, yeah, he's going to be Khan." No, he's not Khan. I promise you, he's not Khan. The movie comes out, he's Khan.
Stupid.
It's the same thing that happened with Lost when everyone said, "Oh, you know what? They're all dead and they're in purgatory." No, they're not. No, they're not. Last episode, sure enough, they've been dead this whole time and they've been in purgatory.
I got a little annoyed because I was shocked because they did something where they were purposely trying to change the timeline so that the plane doesn't crash, and I thought that was fascinating. And then the beginning of the season, the last season, the one woman says that she's dying, says it worked. And what I thought was going to be interesting, remember how there were 2 Earths in Fringe?
Yeah.
That's big spoiler for Fringe. I apologize for those who haven't seen it. What if that had come about because of what happened on Lost? I thought it was almost going to tie it into that.
But
then it turns out, no, they didn't really. And then it was this whole weird thing. It's an afterlife thing, and it's just. I was annoyed. I thought there really were 2 timelines going on. And I'm going to say this for Lost too. What made Lost work with the mystery boxes, you cared about the characters and you liked the characters, and I think that made the mystery box tolerable. A lot of the problem, a lot of these new shows do mystery boxes, is we don't like the characters.
My problem, I saw that TED Talk about the mystery box, okay? And here's my big problem with the mystery box. A lot of what he says about it is true, but he's missing a very, very key component. Ultimately, what is in the box does matter. He says it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Does.
Yes, it does.
Because otherwise, you end up making up crap as you go. And it makes no sense. If you are making a tapestry, okay, you have to have a pattern planned out in advance, and you have to know where it's going to. Terry Nation, the creator of the Daleks, for you Doctor Who fans, he created a show called Blake 7, which I've talked about on
Mr. Matchstick's Cultural
Mr.
Fortress.
Matchstick's Cultural Fortress. He wrote the first episode and the last episode. He knew where it was going. Now, the hard thing for him was that he didn't know who all was actually still going to be available in that last season, and he had a very difficult time because some people had left the show, including the guy who played Blake, Garrett Thomas. So he had to get him to come back for that last episode to be able to do the story he wanted to do. But he had the beginning and the end planned out, and then what happened in the middle, it could work itself out. That could be your mystery box in the middle. Same thing with J. Michael Straczynski. When he did Babylon 5, he planned out the first season, kind of had a rough estimate of what was going on in the middle, and he already had planned out what was happening at the end. And all the middle, he just filled in as he went. J.J. Abrams never has that capstone at the end. He doesn't know what's in his own mystery box.
Yeah, one of my issues, in fact, I would say Fringe, whoever was working on that show must have had an idea, because the enemy and what they're dealing with in the final season makes a lot of sense compared to what's been hinted at in earlier seasons, you know?
God, I love that show.
I
think that well. I think looking at Fringe, you know, set against all the other stuff that he's done, I think that Fringe was actually the exception rather than the rule. I think it worked out because he had people around him, writers that were like.
Plus, he's busy doing the Star Trek movies now.
He's on to doing the next thing, right? Exactly. So, and I see this with J.J. Abrams all the time. He comes in, he mixes things up, and then he's on to the next thing and lets everything fall apart behind him.
Well, that
Fringe just happened to have done well without him, because the people that were left were good writers that said,
knew what they were doing.
I think we know where we're going with this. But yeah, he's done it to Star Wars, he's done it to Star Trek, and let's face it, guys, I'm sorry. I don't care how big a J.J. Abrams fan you are. I don't care how much of a Star Trek, Kelvin-verse fan you are. You have to admit, it's been a failure. Each movie has done worse and worse, and they can't get a fourth movie out. It's just not happening.
Let's touch a little bit on Star Trek Beyond. Believe it or not, I was actually more on board with this one than some of the other ones, because I thought, okay, of course we get the Enterprise destroyed again. How many times is this going to happen? But the point is, though, I kind of like the fact that you have an alien despot on a planet, he's sucking ships in there, and
Sure.
And I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting villain. Idris Elba played the villain, but then later on in the movie, they do the stupid thing where it turns out, he's a guy from the Archer era. He's a Federation guy, and he was really human. He just became alien because he was around this device and stuff. And I'm thinking, no, you could just make him be an alien despot on a planet. That would have been fine.
See, I've heard people compare it to the next gen movie Insurrection. It was like an episode. It didn't have big stakes. It wasn't.
But I don't hate Insurrection. I mean, I think Insurrection feels like a
2-hour episode,
like a 2-hour
episode
of TNG. Yeah. There are worse things in this world. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I cut that movie some slack, and I would have cut Beyond some slack, but then they did this stupid. The big reveal. He's been Federation all along, and he's from a warring era. And I'm thinking, will you stop it? The Federation is always in a warring era. They always try to take the high road, but they end up in a war at some point.
The problem is that, I'll speak to that first. It drives me crazy every time you have this moral thing about, well, we're not, the Federation isn't about war and this and that. Well, that's just fine. But the guys coming to wipe you out are.
Yes.
And this is what, the pacifists always have to understand. You have the choice to roll over and die, and that's the end of your civilization, or you stand up and fight, and that's what the Federation, is constantly dealing with. And that's fine. That's a good moral story to have to address. But yeah, this, I never even saw Beyond. It may have been the best of the three, but I wouldn't know that because I had already bowed out by the end of.
No, I think the first one's the best of the three. I think Beyond could have been the best of the three if it, as Bud Boy says here, Beyond got silly by the end. It gets silly at the end, and I actually like that one actress who I always think is like the woman of 1,000 faces, who they cast as like this alien on the planet that sort of becomes their helper, and she was interesting, and that was a good makeup job they did with her. And I don't know, I'm just disappointed. Well, and then we don't get the Tarantino Star Trek that was kept getting hinted at.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Quentin Tarantino on Sunday.
Yeah,
for
so
sure,
we're not going to bother with that, but that doesn't happen. And they keep talking about all of these non-starter Star Trek movies.
And again, this is business behind the scenes, right? This is in order to make a big financial draw. It takes a lot of money to make a blockbuster film with a lot of special effects and big stars, even a TV show with a lot of special effects. It takes a lot of money, and you need investors to do that, especially now when every single studio is carrying tons and tons of debt. Yep. They need somebody up front like Netflix or something that says, yeah, we'll distribute the show and we'll put up this much money, to make the show or whatever. If you can't get that, you get no show. So what do? They are in marketing mode. They talk a big game about the things they're planning to do, but it's always with their fingers crossed behind their backs because they're saying, we're planning to do this, but we're relying on you to finance it. If you don't do that, we can't do this thing,
Yeah.
And that's what people really need to understand. So every time they announce, Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek or Star Trek 4, or they're going to reboot it again, or it's going to be something else, or it's going to be a spin-off. Look, they can announce it. That doesn't mean it's happening. It literally doesn't happen until it's in the can. And even then, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But by and large, if they get to the point where they've finished filming, it's more expensive to not do anything with it than it is just finish it and release it, even if it sucks, which honestly is what we've been seeing a lot coming out of Hollywood. We have been seeing a lot of productions. Honestly, there are films that are being released that we are panning, and we're going, what were the studios thinking? And the studios are basically agreeing with us and saying, we'd spent all this money. We lose nothing by releasing it at this point.
I think that happened.
If we make $1 off it, it's $1 more than we had.
I think that happened with that New Mutants movie. I think they just get it out there. I think because they think that needed more time in the oven. From what I haven't seen it. From what I've heard. So basically, movies are dormant for now. For as far as and then we have these shows.
So now we get into what
Star Trek Discovery.
I think a lot of people get really upset about, because there's some people that will defend Star Trek Discovery tooth and nail.
Okay.
But honestly, the vast majority of fans are not interested. There are so many levels to this that have upset the fans. First, there was the whole Axanar thing. Axanar was a proof of concept that the fans were totally behind. And when CBS asserted their intellectual property rights, as they have a right to do, I'm not saying they don't, but the way they did it very much was an insult to the fans. And then to come out and basically do their own version of it and do it so poorly. Whereas Axanar had the look, the feel, and definitely honored the canon of Star Trek, Star Trek Discovery did the exact opposite of that.
Right.
They threw out canon, made absolutely zero sense. There is no way that Star Trek Discovery, as we understand it, can work between Enterprise and the original series. It doesn't work. You know?
Yeah. No, there's a lot
from
of
the look of
continuity
the
issues.
ships to the look of the uniforms. And this is what caused a lot of fans to speculate, well, maybe this is something that's taking place in the Kelvin universe, maybe?
There was speculation that this was taking place in the Mirror universe in the beginning, remember?
Right.
People are thinking, because basically all these characters are some of them are some kind of bad people to be in the Federation. Okay. Yeah. And they were thinking, could this be the start of the Mirror universe, the Terran Empire? And then, of course, that gets brought into it later on in that season, which, to their credit, I thought that was interesting how they actually spent a few episodes in the Terran universe. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
To me, that they didn't, it wasn't just a one-off where it just happens in an episode.
And it also did have the feel of, the fans are not happy. We've kind of screwed up some things. Let's try to fix it. You know what? Lorca was his Mirror Universe counterpart all along, and that's why
interesting.
That's why you don't like him. And that was a great. If this is what it is, it was a great backpedal. It was a great,
that was them
back.
Fixing something they did.
Trying to. The other thing was well, let's face it, the Klingons.
Oh
right?
boy.
The biggest thing they took a hit on was the Klingons, and
they completely changed the look.
Second season, they clearly backpedaled on the Klingons, to the point that with a little bit more spackle, so to speak, a little bit more Bondo, if you will, I could probably get behind it. Okay, I got to be honest with you. I really do like what's her name? I'm forgetting the Chancellor's name.
Klingon Chancellor Discovery. Okay.
Yeah, the Klingon female Chancellor. I forget her name. I like her. She's good with the fans. I really do like her.
Yeah. Saru,
Mary Chieffo is the actress.
Yeah.
I just can't remember her character's name.
She plays
L'Rell.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you. I mean, first topless Klingon female that we've seen. Gotta give her props for that. I mean, well, it's not the first topless Klingon that I've ever seen.
That was the other thing
that we've seen in Star Trek episodes.
That was the other thing. You had the whole storyline with the Klingon being buried underneath a human facade, like they did experiments on him to make him turn him into a human. So basically,
this is one where
that was a little hard to swallow.
I get that, and I know a lot of fans have problems
his personality
with this.
had to be suppressed too. Like it wasn't just him in disguise. Like I know we've seen this on Star Trek where they can, manipulate, make you look like a Romulan or whatnot.
This was something that was poorly executed. That had a great deal of potential.
Yeah.
If they cared about lore, they could have made it excellent. Because there are two Klingon technologies from the original series that they seem to have been alluding to. All it would have taken was a single line to cement it. And that would have gone a long way to telling the fans, hey, we care about the lore, and we're with you on this. One was that the Klingons clearly had the ability to do that, reshaping of the body to make them appear human, because they did it with Arnie Darvin in Trouble with Tribbles. He was a Klingon that looked like a human because he had been surgically altered. And Star Trek Discovery just showed us the early concept for that,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was brilliant, but they never made that connection. They didn't, The other thing was that whole, mental rewrite thing. Klingons had a technology called the Mind Sifter. It was a torture device that they used to extract information from people, and it left them an empty husk. All they had to do was make a reference to it, call it, whatever in Klingon, and have someone translate it as mind sifter. Boom. The fans would catch on, know exactly what was going on.
Well, this stuff's important, and you'd figure they'd have someone on staff that knows this stuff and can just say, I'm the Star Trek expert, basically the Pablo Hidalgo of...
Don't you even. That's their problem. They've got people like Hidalgo out there saying, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm the lore expert, but it's fiction. We can make up whatever the heck we want. We can make up sonar in space.
They can make a ship, in my opinion, that was more advanced. The Discovery ship seems more advanced than stuff we saw in the TNG era.
Again, this is another thing. This is another thing that they were this close. They could have fixed it, right? All they had to do was just say, have the Enterprise show up the way it did, right? Have it look completely different. The uniforms were different. The bridge looks different. It's brighter. Why is everything laid out this way? They had their storyline about the computer virus or whatever. You know what? There's certain things that we had to do. We've switched over to Duotronics, which is, the lead into Kirk's era and the computer and whatnot. It's less flashy, but it uses less resources. It's more efficient, blah, 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 blah. And we just went with a different aesthetic. It's just a little bit brighter. And then you have rocker arms and you have things like that. And it looks less technological, but it does everything that the other Enterprise did, and it's much more efficient. Boom.
There you go. Okay.
Because this is the thing, okay? If you are out tomorrow walking down the street and you see a girl walking down the street with a miniskirt and go-go boots, are you going to look at her and go, well, that looks just stupid because that's not in fashion? You're going to look and go, man, retro and kind of hot. Right?
What works and what doesn't work, as opposed to the shoulder pad suits of the 80s. Okay.
And we've already established, right, that just because it looks more advanced doesn't mean it actually works better. Look, anybody who's had a bad upgrade on their computer has gone, can I just set this back? I can do less now than I could before. Windows 95, people.
Yeah, there's this whole thing, what is it, retrofuturism, like sometimes the older technology in some ways worked better than what we have now and that sort of thing. Yeah, I get it.
And look, we also have a world where people like me and Nanette, will dress up in Victorian styles and do the whole steampunk thing. It's... the idea of steampunk, right? Where you have copper and brass wires and stuff and a typewriter keyboard, but it's all hooked up to a computer that does everything that a computer would do, right?
Exactly.
Just because it looks antiquated doesn't mean it's less advanced. So they had an opportunity to explain these things away, especially because in Enterprise, actually both Enterprise, Next Gen, Enterprise, Deep Space Nine, at least those three. I don't know about Voyager, but all three of those shows showed us original series bridges, and they weren't a problem.
Nope.
Okay? There was In a Mirror Darkly in Enterprise, where they found the Constitution class vessel that went missing.
I remember that, yeah.
In the, what was it, the Enterprise incident? Or something like that.
Yeah.
The one with the Foleys.
It was from that.
Gets sent back in time and into the Mirror Universe. And Mirror Universe Archer finds it. And he changes into the uniform of the captain, and he sits down on the bridge, and he says, this ship is so much more advanced than ours.
Yeah, he wants to use it to take over the Empire.
It doesn't look more advanced, but it's got better engines, better weapons, better everything.
Yes.
Boom, done.
He fights a Gorn on the ship too. I remember that. That was kind of neat.
Yeah, and it was kind of a upgraded, style for the Gorn. Now, the episode Trouble and Tribulations, right? They go back in time and they literally put the crew of the Deep Space Nine into scenes from the original series. It was really, really cool.
Well, again, though, all these issues could tie back to the problem with 20% different. Correct?
And that's what we're getting at, right? So, yes, this may not be this is Bad Robot, but it is not the Kelvin universe, right? But this was still them trying to do something different enough so that they could market it. But here's where all of that breaks down, okay? People don't want to buy action figures of Saru and Mikey Spock and, you know, all these characters. They don't want you know, the Discovery. They don't want the JJ Prize. They don't want those action figures. They just don't. They want the classic stuff. If it's not that, leave me alone. And it's the same thing that's happening to the Star Wars people that aren't, they're not able to sell the action figures from the sequels, but they can sell prequel remakes of prequel characters and the original series and retro figures and vintage figures. They just can't get anybody to buy the new stuff unless it's the Mandalorian.
Well, what is one of the main problems I have with Discovery is that Star Trek is an ensemble cast. Ensemble, you have a whole different episodes of Star Trek, especially TNG. They focus on different characters that are a part of the crew.
Yep.
On Discovery, it's the Michael Burnham show.
It is, and you have great background characters that in an ensemble thing, you'd have one episode every other week that would focus on a different character, right? You might focus on your main character most of the time, but then every other week you would focus on Saru, or you would focus on Tilly, right? Or
but like, who's the main
Can
character?
I just say something?
Yeah.
Tilly? I wish there was more about Tilly in that show.
Yes.
She's probably the most Star Trek character in that show.
Yes.
Not to mention she's kind of babified.
Yes.
I kind of like her.
It's fine. Yeah. No, here's the issue. The issue is on TNG, you would have episodes, because again, episodic series, but you'd have an episode that focuses on Data, an episode that focuses on Worf, Deanna Troi. Everyone would get their own episodes.
And you end up getting things like their background story, even if it's just a story about when they were a kid or something like that,
We had a character on Discovery. And I kept wondering, who is this? Is there an android as a member of the crew? I didn't know who she was. They didn't bother explaining her to me the whole first season. We got into season 2. I find out who she is. She's a cyborg.
Yep.
She's a cyborg, and I felt bad for her character. She had a horrible tragedy happen in her life. Like, her husband was killed. She had to get stuck. She has to, she can't store all of her memories in her head at the same time. She has to keep something stored on a computer, and it's tragic. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, we're getting to know this character, and then they kill her off in that same episode.
Exactly. That's the one that had the gray robotic face?
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was another one who had cybernetic implants.
And I liked her little comment, too, how she says cyborg's role. It was kind of a funny moment, you know, because they're both cyborgs, that she's more... I mean, I guess Geordi, in a way, is a cyborg, too, on TNG. Kinda. He has the implants. Yeah, so it's not, Pike, poor Pike, let's not even get started on what happens to them, but... and this is...
and that could have led to something really good, right? Because they had introduced the character of Pike. If this led up to him having that accident and ending up in the wheelchair, they could have offered him the implants like her, right? And he refuses it because he doesn't want them messing with his brain, because that's all that's left of him. His body is destroyed. Yeah. Don't touch my mind.
That would make sense. And I felt horrible. This woman had a tragic life, and she's making the best of it. Yeah. You had another member of the crew. She was apparently raised by parents that were actually religious, which I thought was interesting, because you don't really have religious people. I never really heard of religious humans on Star Trek, at least not mentioned. I mean, there probably were, and they didn't believe in technology. So she joined the Federation, which I thought was interesting. Like, they were kind of anti all this, but we don't really get to know her that well. It's a lot of stuff on there. Like, we have all these other characters don't get fleshed out. And I think Michael Burnham her character tends to change on the show a lot,
and this is where we get to another fundamental problem, and that's writing. It's you it's bad enough that they have jettisoned the lore and aren't honoring the lore that this comes from, but they're not even building their own world. These characters aren't getting development. It's hard to care about characters where we don't know them, and once we do get to know them, you kill them off. It's like, you know,
Like
it's just bad writing and bad show development.
like I didn't have a problem with Michael Burnham being raised by Vulcans. I thought that was interesting. I didn't think it should have been Spock's family.
Exactly.
Okay? If they wanted to
Exactly.
bring someone and make it to Paul or make it somebody else, or just someone we never
But
saw before.
that is why so many people have a problem with the writing. They look at it as being so juvenile. It's
Yeah.
like this is the kind of fan fiction you get from a 14-year-old who can't think beyond Spock.
But I know-
If she's raised by Vulcans, it's got to be Spock, right? No, there's a whole damn planet of Vulcans
Yes.
she could have been raised by.
And the thing I thought would have been interesting is I think one of the things she does in that bad way to start the show too was with that two-parter with her, because you hate the character by the end of that two-parter.
Yeah.
And she kills the Klingon leader or whatever in what looked like a fit of rage. And I thought, well, this is actually kind of interesting. What if she's been raised by Vulcans and takes the whole logic thing, but because she's a human, she can't really, like, her emotions end up getting suppressed and then they come out in bad ways. Do you understand?
Yeah,
I
that
thought
could have
that
been
would have
good.
been an interesting
That could
thing
have
to
been
play
good.
around with. But again, we get to season 2. We had that whole dumb storyline with the Red Angel. And then it turns out to be her mother. And I'm saying no, because one of the things that formed her character was when they were Federation colonists on this planet that was attacked by Klingons, and they hide her in the closet, and she sees the Klingons murder both her parents, and then
Yeah.
she watches as the Klingons eat the dinner her parents were preparing a few minutes ago. And that was like a big thing of her character. And this is something I had an issue with even on Doctor Who with Moffat. Like, you'd have things
Yeah.
happen that don't get explained.
Yeah.
Like, how is the mother still around? Did I miss something? Was that mentioned in like 3 sentences a while ago and I wasn't paying attention? Like, how the mother could still be alive and she's in this time traveling Red Angel suit thing, blah, blah. And then there's an AI enemy called Control, and it was not that compelling. And it's just.
It was all well, look, this is what happens when you get, writers for the Gilmore Girls writing Star Trek. Seriously.
And the sad thing is, I like the Gilmore Girls.
Oh, Trey, just perfect. We said all this good stuff about Star Trek. Now we're starting to be critical and you come back.
We've actually been trying to be fair. We're not picking on
We've
any of the
been
actors.
very, very
we're not
positive.
even picking. We're not even picking on any of the character concepts on these shows. If they were fleshed out and utilized, I think they'd be fine. Okay, we're not really getting to know any of the other crew members on Discovery. That's another issue I had that we were
Yeah.
bringing up. Okay, and then they
Yeah.
killed off the one. And
So let's. Okay, but I'm not. There are a couple other good things that I did want to say about Star Trek Discovery.
okay,
And this is not something I would have thought I would have said first season. But they did bring a lot to Klingon lore that I did like.
okay,
You may be surprised by that. But starting with the first episode, where we have the sarcophagus ship, which does not look anything like a Klingon ship we've ever seen before, what it did do was it showed us mummified Klingons being stored in sarcophagi. Is that the word? Or sarcophaguses?
I've heard it said both ways.
Okay.
I think it's sarcophagi. I think that's the proper.
Okay.
Yeah. English.
On a ship with some sort of religious significance. Kind of makes sense ever since Star Trek 3, when Spock is taking his little quiz trying to get his head on straight. What is this?
That's Star Trek
is a
4.
Klingon. Oh, Star Trek 4. Thank you.
Beginning
Sorry.
of Star Trek 4.
Right. After they get him back in Star Trek 3.
Yeah.
What is this? That's a Klingon mummification glyph. It was a single line. It was just dropped. We know nothing about it. Now we know they've acknowledged Klingons at one time mummified their dead. They kept them in sarcophagus. Okay, great. And for those of us that really dig the Klingon language, we got the word sarcophagus and mummy and, some other words related to that because they needed to be able to say them in in dialogue. That was a cool thing.
Yeah.
So I go into this and I look at that sarcophagus ship and I go, yeah, this looks nothing like any of the Klingon ships we've seen, but we don't know how ancient it is. For all we know, this could have been a Herc ship or what are they called? The demons, the Klingon demon, the Fechlari.
I could be wrong, but I got the impression the different houses had different styles of ships. Is that right?
And yes, and
Okay.
then they also established that most of those ships were Mokai ships.
And then
they comes
introduced
season 2,
they introduced
and they
the battle
introduced the
cruiser.
D7.
Yeah.
You get that whole, okay, so now because that was also a big part of their first season arc, you had the separate disparate houses, and the unification that Kalish had brought about had kind of fallen apart. So you have Takuvma come back and say, look, we've got to reunify. And then they have the torchbearer and the beacon ship and so forth. I'm like, okay, this is good lore. I'm digging this. I like this. From my personal point of view, in Klingondom, so to speak, I was kind of liking this, especially when, okay, so these bird of prey ships, they're going to give way to a more utilitarian, imperial ship, in the coming generation. Okay, I can dig that. Plus, we'd already seen a bird of prey, a more proto bird of prey in the Enterprise era. So we know that whatever house created that is probably going to get the contract that does the imperial ships, and the different factions are going to have to work together, but they might have different ships. So there's a place for all of this. That's why I could also excuse away different uniform styles in the JJ verse and all this kind of stuff, the helmets and stuff, all of that kind of stuff. I was kind of able to, that kind of stuff kind of grew on me. I kind of dig it. As long as there is that unification that leads to what we see in the original series and Next Gen,
Yes.
Leading up to that. But yeah, I have real problems with a lot of the lore and stuff related to the Fetty stuff. But as I often tell a lot of my other Trek friends, I don't care. I'm Klingon. You Fetties can deal with that crap.
See,
That's your problem, not mine.
I'm more into the Fetty stuff. But anyway, okay. And then we get to the finale, which is a bunch of explosions and the ship gets sent to the future. I haven't bothered to watch season 3. I could if I wanted to.
I heard they went 1,000 years in the future, and dilithium
Federation is
destroyed,
gone. It basically sounds like Andromeda, which was the plot line for Andromeda with
sounds
the Federation.
A lot and
like
to be honest with
collapsing.
you, it doesn't sound like anything anybody is really interested in if they're into Star Trek.
No.
And it's a future that may or may not happen, and I think a lot of fans just kind of don't care.
So then we have our other series.
So, yeah.
I've seen every episode, too. I can talk about Picard.
I got about halfway through Picard, and I was done. As soon as they drilled out Icheb's eye and Seven had to put him down, I'm like, I'm done. This is not my Star Trek.
I'm a big Red Letter Media fan. I don't know if you've heard of those guys.
I have,
YouTube. Yeah.
I don't really watch them, but I've heard of them.
You may get a kick out of their Star Trek videos, and they in fact, what they've been doing during a lot of the lockdown is they've been going back and they've been pulling out their favorite TNG episodes, and they have really good insights. But they were also talking about Star Trek Picard, because they're of course big TNG fans, and the one guy was trying to explain, wait, how does this happen? Were those ships attacking the Mars building plants, were they Romulan, or were they also androids? And they're saying, and the other guy saying, you're in the beginning stages of grief. like you're in the morning stage of grief, like he can't handle, like he's pointing out all the awful inconsistencies.
There is no answer. It's just we don't know. There's another YouTuber, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but I'm sure I'll reference him again in the future. He does different movies like Frozen as told by an idiot.
Oh, funny.
And he does a synopsis explaining these movies kind kind of like, what is that Latin character from Ant-Man? You know who I'm talking about?
Who?
The Hispanic guy from Ant-Man,
I
the
know
sidekick.
him. Yeah.
He's so funny, and
Yes.
he'll tell a story, and he's actually become memes because of the way.
No, he's
this
good.
is
He's a good actor.
this guy does
They
exactly
had him
that.
play Mr. Rourke in the Fantasy Island movie, by the way.
Yes, I didn't see that, but that same actor.
No, don't. That was not good casting for that.
Okay.
I like him in the Ant-Man movies, but that was not good.
Okay, so imagine that character telling the story of, like Frozen. He gets a little vulgar with his language, but in a way that's
I'll
just
check it out.
hysterical. And anyway,
Oh,
I kind of feel like you almost have to do that with when you explain things like Star Trek Picard or Discovery. You got to go, yeah, and then this guy, he rewired all the androids and they blew all the shit up, and I don't know why, just cause, I mean, it's...
Oh, by the way, Max World Entertainment is saying goodbye.
All right.
His dinner's ready.
I would ask you, though, Trey, go back and listen to everything before this, because you might be encouraged by some of the positive things I say about Star Trek before I start bashing it.
Well, we're trying to be, but
we're being constructive criticism, not bashing. We're giving constructive criticism.
Okay, now one of the big things, now you may think you know the Federation, but this is not the Federation you knew from TNG, and I'm thinking, why not? Okay,
yeah.
The Federation should always be the Federation, okay? And you have, just from the get-go, the whole tone is, with that awful scene with the reporter, yelling, and the Romulan refugee thing. And this is going back to something I don't like, Romulus blowing up. Okay?
Yeah.
And this is one way how I would fix Star Trek immediately when I do a new Star Trek series and it's set past TNG. Oh, look, the Romulus is still there. It didn't blow up. Okay, that's what I would do.
There's that. Dumb. There's also so again, this is another one of those situations where Star Trek Online does the best they can with what they have to work with.
Yeah.
They have it so that the Romulans are now fractured. You have the imperialist, authoritarians, and the ones that do want to reunify with Vulcan and stuff. And it makes for a great storyline. If you want to play a Vulcan in Star Trek Online, because there is that...
well, that sounds more interesting than what we got on Picard.
Yeah, they've created a new Romulus, but there is infighting between two factions. Who should be in control? So they reach out to the Federation and the Klingons, and therefore, if you're playing a Romulan character, you have to align with either the Federation or the Klingon, because they only have really two factions going right now that you can play. Even if you end up playing a Jem'Hadar, you've got to align yourself with the Federation or the Klingons just because, just for game purposes. Not that the Federation and the Klingon are like directly adversarial, but they're the only two factions that have fully complete and separate storylines.
Okay.
So if you're going to play a Romulan, you have to follow one storyline or the other one, because they didn't flesh out a whole storyline for the Romulans.
I feel like they've never fleshed out the Romulans.
Yeah, that's and
I
feel like
history.
that definitely kind of seems to follow through.
I think
Star
they were
Trek
trying
Online.
to on TNG. I think they did some interesting things on TNG with the Romulans. We get to Picard though. It's an empire, but they're all like these kind of like refugee status type, right?
And this whole Zhat Vash thing is
Terrible.
so half-assed.
Terrible. Absolutely
so
terrible.
Half-assed.
That didn't exist. They're just introducing it now. They've had scenes that, of course, the Romulans, they had roboticists too. They had cyberneticists.
Well, this brings me to one of the memes going around where they say something about in Picard, there is no androids in the among the Romulans. Oh, really? Because I remember a Romulan in Next Gen saying to Data, "I know a lot of Romulan cyberneticists that would love to take you apart."
You could make it another alien race that that has a thing against androids. I mean, it
It's,
still would have been lame, but it's not going against continuity, at least at that point, or
Yeah.
another race in Star Trek where that wasn't fleshed out, and then you can introduce that into the lore. Don't do it with the Romulans because it's already been established. Never mind. Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, this is now, at least with Star Trek Discovery, we had the plausible deniability that maybe it was the JJ verse, maybe it's another universe, maybe something. But no, now we have actual Picard, the actual guy who saved the universe and saved time and time again, who has now become, Jake Picard, who has to apologize for all that I've done because I'm a white man and
I
I'm
live
old
in I have antique furniture and I have a wine estate, and I'm thinking, listen, we talked about this the other week. I think.
Yeah, we
Remember?
did. This whole idea they want to get their they want to get their socialist points in about how they're still in the 24th century. There's still this
inequality,
this class inequality, and it's like, do you understand? You live in a world, a post-scarcity world where you have replicators. The fact that you live in a trailer in the desert is because you're a dumbass, and that's what you chose to do.
Yeah, well, let's get on to the character. I think her name was Raffi, right?
Yeah.
Who plays her? She's actually a good actress. She was actually on season 2 of Ash versus the Evil Dead. I remember her in that.
Yep.
Raffi Star Trek.
Oh, and she's an alcoholic drug addict. She's an alcoholic. She's an alcoholic in a world that has synthahol.
In my opinion, this is a universe that hates this show hates its characters.
Yes.
It's torturing all its characters. I actually feel sympathy for all the characters on the show, and I've argued that I wouldn't mind seeing them in a normal TNG era show where they're just members of a crew. I think it would be neat. I don't think any of them are bad characters.
Any single one of these flawed characters would have a single episode arc where you find out that Raffi has a bad history and she's a drug addict and she's an alcoholic and she is put on administrative leave. She is given mandatory time with the counselor where she's going to get off the drugs and get her crap together, or she's going to have to leave Starfleet.
Maybe there'll even be a science fiction mystery thrown in during this episode that she's
probably
has to go through while she's going through recovery.
But yeah, because that would be a B plot. The A plot would be something else entirely.
Yeah.
You also have again, this is where I want to get back to this thing about having to pay the artists, right? So you have the writer who wrote the character of Icheb and the other Borg characters and what's his name, Hugh and so forth. These are writers that created characters for Star Trek. So when you use those characters again, you have to pay that writer. There is union rules that you have to do this. And CBS didn't do that. So those writers had to take CBS to court to get their money. Okay? Wow. At the same time, you have other characters that probably should have shown up that didn't. Like a mention of Lal. A big story plot here was Data's daughter. And there's zero mention of the character of Lal. The best episode of Star Trek, in my opinion.
They don't bring her up.
Not even a mention.
They didn't bring Lore up either on the show.
No mention of Lore.
I was expecting Lore to show up, yeah.
Again, a mention of Lal and a mention of Lore would have meant they had to pay somebody.
They mentioned his brother from Nemesis. That's all they did. I keep thinking that they're...
Before, yeah.
Michael Chabon was in charge of this, and that was a mistake. And just the Icheb thing, let's talk about that.
Hold on a second. I'm going to say goodbye to Bud Boy Productions. He's leaving now. And dude, don't be sorry. Do not apologize. The fact that you have made it this long. I mean, the sun must be frickin' coming up over there already.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how you've made it as long as you have, but dude, I will. You just joined the Star Wars group. I saw that. He answered the question. You know, why you want to join this group? Well, you invited me. I thought that was brilliant. I will contact you on MeWe. I will send you a message. See if you want maybe next week or the week after, if you'd like. I would love to do a show about, you know, British American TV and culture.
Yeah.
But thanks for hanging out as long as you did, man.
I'll be
And of
tapping
course,
out.
this stream will be up there for you to check out later on, the stuff that you missed or you might have fallen asleep during or what you miss after this. But we will be wrapping up pretty soon because
Yeah, I do want to get through Picard. Though,
Aged Boomer's
I
an
forget.
aged boomer, and he's, you know,
Well,
he's
yes.
starting to
I'm
wax.
getting there, but I do want to get through Picard though. The
Yeah.
whole Echep thing I want to get into more. For
Yes.
starters, just the way they handled that on the show too,
That was
very
terrible.
grotesque.
Yeah.
This is not Alien, okay? This is not something
You know,
I expect
and
to
something
see.
we didn't that directly relates to what you're saying is it relates to Discovery too. All the F-bombs. It's like,
No good.
you know
No.
what? If you want to make a show where you get a new audience, you gotta target the kids. If you don't make something kid friendly, then your audience is everybody who's older, who is going to enjoy it for a little while and then lose interest and go off and do something else. You want the kids that want to dress up as your characters for Halloween and then go to conventions and dress up and do the cosplay and do the role playing and collect the toys, so that a generation from now, they want to bring their kids around. If you don't do that, then there's no point bringing in a new audience.
Star Trek is a family property. It's a family movie series, family television series. It's something you can bring your kids to go see.
Yeah,
it's like
and if
Star
it's
Wars
not,
in that way.
you're not
okay?
going to have an audience in the future.
No,
you know,
and
it's just
by
not-
having F-bombs and by having some
Yeah.
rather violent, there's a lot of violence on this in Picard too, which
Yeah.
I felt feels out of place on a Star Trek series. I mean, there's always going to be violence, like people getting shot, but you're not going to the detail. Do you understand? It's just
And
it's
the same argument that people had about Jake Skywalker. You had all this character development over the 3 movies. We saw this guy grow up, go from a dumb, brash kid to a wise, intelligent Jedi Master. You had Han Solo go from being a pirate rogue who shoots a guy in cold blood because, let's face it, the guy threatened that he was going to kill him. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to kill you first, no problem. To become a hero. Not only a hero, but a family man, you know, marries
Yeah.
a princess, for crying
Yeah.
out loud. These are all characters with character growth, character arcs. To throw all that away and say, yeah, no, he ended up being a deadbeat dad and he just went back to, you know, being a pirate.
Terrible.
And, you know, Luke got disillusioned and, you know, he went and drank titty milk, you know, on a, you know, secluded planet because Kylo Ren. I mean, whatever. You know, it's the same thing I'm seeing here.
It's
Picard was the heart of the Federation. He always was the moral compass.
He stuck to that Prime Directive. Okay, I have to give him points, and sometimes he figured out a way to make the Prime Directive work in his favor to get out of a
And
situation.
everything that
it was a
he-
very non-Kirk thing to do.
They
but he actually
basically
made it
said
work, yeah.
everything positive that Picard ever did, fuck all that. Just screw it.
It's really annoying.
And 7 of 9 had
wow.
another incredible story arc. Okay, she became something so much more than she was, and it was because of the influence of Janeway.
Yeah.
Fuck all that.
No.
She's just whatever she is now.
She's like a vigilante killer now.
Yeah.
It's I mean, she gets revenge.
And let me say
murder of
this.
Echep. I mean,
I will say this one thing. I mean, there's a lot of people that have a problem with the lesbian thing. I'm telling you, I don't. But that's a whole different way of looking at Star Trek. So don't take my opinion on that too much.
okay.
I mean,
But
we're
she
talking
was-
about Jerry Ryan here, okay? So
But she
I'm-
was
I'm
with
kind of
Chakotay.
okay.
She was with Chakotay. That wasn't established on Voyager, right? I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
maybe she's swinging on both sides of the
Okay.
fence. Whatever.
Okay, that's fine.
I
But
mean, you know,
anyway, What was I going to bring up though?
I mean, maybe T'Pol's still around. Maybe the two of them. I don't know. I'm just
the
thinking.
two.
I think there's an adult parody to be done out there. That's all I'm saying.
The two women brought on the shows for certain
Oh
reasons.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Anyways, though, but what were we talking about? We were talking about the whole Icheb thing.
Yeah.
If you're getting around to watching that Red Letter Media thing, they mentioned that they think the reason they killed off Icheb was because the actor did something on social media that the writers didn't like, and they wanted to kill
I
the
heard
actor
something.
off.
I heard something about that, but I'm telling you,
I don't know if that's true or not.
Talk about shooting your balls off
And they cast a different
to
actor
spite
as
your
them, too.
gender. I mean,
And
it's just, yeah, it's again. This is the same problem that we have with Gina Carano, right? It's like you guys just effed yourself because you didn't think this through. If you want to get rid of an actor, you just fucking recast him.
But that's what they did in the episode, but then they killed off the character. And the theory is that they don't want this actor showing up to conventions with, they would hurt his way to show up to conventions now. I don't know if any of this is true. That was a theory that they were posing.
Here's the problem with conventions, okay?
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, you had Creation, which was the one company that was licensed with CBS and Paramount to do official Star Trek conventions, okay? So if Paramount, CBS, whomever said, this guy, he's persona non grata, he cannot be a guest at your conventions, Creation goes, okay, as long as we're getting, Will Wheaton and Patrick Stewart and, whomever, okay, fine, But they cut Creation loose, and they signed up with a new convention company. Mm-hmm. So Creation's going to go on and do general sci-fi conventions, which means they can have whomever they want, who has been a star and appeared in anything, including Star Trek, including the guy that played Icheb.
Or Fringe, or Primeval.
Yeah, exactly. And now that actor can show up, and he's not obligated to be positive about CBS. So,
There you go. And then we can finally find out what's happening. Yeah.
And that is the big problem. And then same thing with Gina Carano. Gina Carano says, F you, I'm out. The fans go, well, that's not cool. And you know what? There's a lot of people that support Gina that aren't even Star Wars fans that were like, I've been fired from companies before in very shitty ways. That's not cool. I don't dig that. That's not how Disney's supposed to behave.
No.
And so a lot of people turned against Disney because of that.
I hope, though, if they get new management over there and she gets offered, that she takes it back, if only to say that we can conquer cancel culture. Okay?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
There's a lot of people going, oh, she'll never go back. She said, all these things. And it's like, things change.
Yeah.
You offer her enough money, she contracts for a season at a time.
Offer her some respect and maybe just give her an apology. Okay?
Exactly.
And
you don't know what the deal is behind the scenes. That she, and because then she comes back and she goes, I'm back, bitches. That says a lot. That's victory.
But Icheb is not coming back.
No. And what that is that wasn't just killing off Icheb. That was killing off the heart and spirit of what people loved about Star Trek.
And
now
Voyager, I think, especially, yeah.
Now there is not this bright, positive future that was envisioned by Gene Roddenberry, that was held alive by Picard throughout the Next Generation. And even in the darkest times of Enterprise, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, those captains had a moral compass that said, no, I'm even willing to give my life to uphold what's right. If necessary, I'll even give up the lives of my crew to do what's right.
They killed off you.
Yeah.
And I thought it was actually interesting that he was working to help other Borg get out of the collective. I thought that was interesting that he was helping with the project. I don't mind that storyline for that character.
So that's another thing that says, you know what? There is no hope. The collective is going to win. And honestly, I kind of feel like these social Marxists see themselves as the
No.
Borg, and they
No,
don't
no.
want you to have hope.
No, but here's the problem. Even the Borg, though, as a threat, was downplayed. These other machines out there make the Borg look like, they don't say this, but Borg look
Yeah.
like Little Mary Sunshine. Like, don't underplay the Borg. Like, the Borg were very diminished on the show as villains. So were the Romulans. Really, it's
Right.
like nothing was interesting except for these nameless things that we don't really get to see. And then,
Yeah.
of course, Noonien Soon had a son, which we never heard about on the old show, which is a bunch
Right.
of BS. And then there's a planet of androids.
I'd like to
and
know
just-
exactly how that happened since his wife was an android. Just saying.
Did he clone himself in a lab? That'll be season 2. We'll find out about all the Noonien Soon clones out there. None of this makes any sense. It's dumb.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be attacking Picard, but really, and
There's not much hope. There really isn't.
well, unless Q snaps his fingers and fixes everything.
So that is the carrot they dangle, right? Hey,
Yeah.
we got John Delancey coming back. That means we could always just fix
Well,
everything the way you want it, and it's not going to happen.
It would be funny, though, if they had a different set of writers having to take over, and
Yeah.
Q was basically making fun of the show up until this point, all the stupidity. Picard's an android now that will, of course, age and die the same way as he would if he didn't have that terminal illness, which they just introduced anyway for ticking time clock
That
purposes.
would be a funny
Makes no
commentary.
sense.
Q comes along and goes, "What happened to you? You're an android now? But you continue to age. So what's the point of being an android?
It's so
What is
stupid.
wrong with you humans?"
I don't understand any of this. I don't understand why Jean-Luc Picard, especially after he got angry at the Federation, decided to retire in the Vineyard. You don't have to retire there. Go back to the planet from Insurrection, where you have a potential girlfriend waiting for you, and you will de-age back to like 30 something.
That's
okay?
another good point. But again,
what is
that,
wrong with
as soon as you acknowledge that storyline, you owe royalties to the writer for Star Trek Insurrection.
Why would Picard even stay? Just retire there. They'll welcome him back with open arms. Especially he could live in that society for a while because he saved their world. So yeah, you're going to be welcome here, Picard. Okay, and it's just that doesn't make any sense. They even had a romance going for him with that other woman.
Yeah.
They could
They
could
did.
have rekindled that. None of this makes any sense.
No, it
And
does not
the
at all.
other thing I'm going to talk about briefly, I have to get going soon, but they are apparently doing Strange New Worlds. The rumors behind the scenes are the woman in charge of Paramount, I think, is basically saying we got to make something that's good and the fans will like. I think she's wanting. I think there is. If the rumors are correct, and we know rumors aren't always correct, but that they want Strange New Worlds to be a normal Star Trek show that people will like. Okay, I don't know.
This is again, people can say what they want to about rumors, but let's just talk again the realities of business.
Yeah.
Okay, they need Star Trek to either be profitable on its own or profitable enough to sell off. One way or the other, they've got to make it profitable, and it just is not. The numbers don't work. There is no look. Go to the store. Look at the comic books. Look at the toy aisle. Look at the costume shop. Okay? How much stuff is being marketed for Star Trek Discovery? How much is being marketed for Star Trek Picard? And how much is being marketed for all the other Star Trek? All of your marketing is for all the other Star Trek. You can't find phasers and communicators for Star Trek Discovery. You're not finding costumes for Star Trek Picard. Nobody wants those things, and licensees won't spend the money for the license because they know it won't sell. There's no demand for it. So it has to happen, or it's just going to tank just the way everything else has.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We can keep our fingers crossed. I didn't even comment on the cartoons, but we can save that for another time if we want to do that.
Well,
at all.
you could almost say the cartoons are to Star Trek exactly the same way the EU is for Star Wars. You can't jettison all of that, beta canon and then come along and do another cartoon and say, but this is canon. It doesn't work. You don't jettison the EU and then put out your High Republic and say, but this one is canon. Nope, because if the books are not canon, then these books are going to not be canon in 2, 3, 4 years. So why should I bother investing?
Yeah. I know there's another cartoon coming up that's supposed to be on Nickelodeon, was it? I don't know.
Don't know. Don't care.
Yeah. But Strange New Worlds, we'll see. I did like the actor they had for Captain Pike.
I did too.
Rebecca Romaine, Stamos,
and I like Rebecca Romaine. Yes, I'm still pulling for you guys, Stamos.
Okay.
And even the guy that they had playing Spock, if they just make him the real Spock and make him shave, damn it.
Yeah. I don't like that hair, but if he shaves, he'll
but
be
it's
fine.
all about the writing. It's all about the story. If they can get it on straight and fix that bridge, that is not the Enterprise. That is not the Enterprise bridge.
And stop having him smile. Stop having Spock smile. Stop it.
Stupid.
Stop having him smile. Spock always had a friendly demeanor, okay, especially when it regards to friends.
Right.
He doesn't need to be showing all these emotions. He still came off as friendly. He's like
Again,
Data,
we
okay?
saw all this backstory for him in his father, and you find out about, especially when his parents come on and you hear stories from his mother and how he was picked on as a kid. We can all relate to that, right?
Yeah.
So we know what it was like for him to be different, but he would pretend to be Vulcan because he lived with Vulcans, and he would suppress his emotions and he would behave in a logical way. And it was anathema for anyone to see him smile, and he would be embarrassed by that. So he would hide it. Look, you want representation? You want to know what it's like? You want to show what it's like to be, say, gay, transgendered, some other kind of minority.
To being an outsider.
To being an outsider? Well, that's Spock, guys. So honor that. Give him that agency that he has had for all these generations. Don't take that away from him, and don't take it away from the people looking to see their representation in these shows.
Yeah. Because we've all felt like the outsider at some point, too.
Exactly.
We all come from different backgrounds.
We've been the nerd. We've been the one that was picked on, who needed to behave in a particular way. And then whenever that would come out, even after you go on to college and people don't care about that stuff, you still, are sheepish about allowing something to show and whatnot.
Like the fact that you might have bought Star Trek blueprints.
That sort
exactly.
Of thing. Right.
People, the kids today, they don't get what being into the nerd stuff was like in the 80s. And, you think being a Star Trek fan was bad. Try being a Doctor Who fan in the 80s. Oh, no. This was not allowed. It's all fine now. And, this was before the days of the internet.
Thank you.
You're into this stuff, and they're like, there's no one else. You might be lucky if you run into one or two friends that like this stuff. And, then that's why you would go to the conventions, to run into part of the reason you run into other people that like the same thing and realize you weren't alone. Okay. But I'm going to keep my finger.
I like to think that there is still hope for Star Trek.
I think there is too. I think, oddly enough, out of the big three, Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, I think the most hope lies in Star Trek, because I think you just get a new production team in there. You get people that just want to write good science fiction,
and you can have the ability
ignore
to
the bad stuff. Yeah.
They've done the time travel thing. They've got Q involved. They have every plot ability to fix things if they
you know what else you
put
can do,
their mind to it.
And you can just ignore it. You could hint that's in another universe, like the universe where Riker was.
But what you
need
need is you need to get the continuity back into it. You can't have this mentality of it's science fiction, we can do whatever we want. No. You own a franchise. You have to honor that franchise. Go talk to people like Rick Sternbach and Michael Okuda and Denise Okuda and get your continuity fixed. You've done some stupid things, but Trek has done stupid things in the past that they've fixed. Bumpy versus smoothhead Klingons. We got past it. We figured it out. You can do it again. Just get it done, people.
There are continuity things you can fix, and then for me with Doctor Who, I feel like they've gone beyond the pale, but that's another stream. Okay.
Yeah.
But this was good. I think this was constructive. I mean, I don't know if we came up with any solutions, but like I said, I think it comes down to money, and I think it comes down to
And
we'll
that
see
was
what this.
that was the other thing. If you're gonna spend money, quit spending it on lens flares and unnecessary special effect shots. Spend
And-
it on paying whatever licensing and whatever royalties you have to address the storylines that happened in the past. Honor that. Okay? Quit pinching the pennies on the things that are important and blowing your wad on stuff that isn't important.
like huge sets that don't make a lot of sense in a Star Trek series.
And stupid special effects that look at go out on YouTube and watch prequel to Axanar, and then watch the first episode of Discovery and watch that battle segment. Look at the two. One was done on almost no budget, and the other one was done on Paramount's budget, or CBS's budget, I should say. Which one looks better?
Yeah.
I'm
No,
just
you're
saying
right.
that fans using their computers at home are doing better special effects than what you're spending way too much money on. Get your budget figured out, CBS Paramount.
Yeah, and just know what to prioritize on these shows, and just listen to the fans.
Yeah.
And just go look back to what worked and do that. Anyway,
All right, man. You have a good night. Sunday, tomorrow night over on Netters Network at 9:00 Central Time, we'll be watching. We'll be doing a rewatch or watch party or whatever you want to call it of Alita Battle Angel, where we will also be giving away a free copy of the DVD to somebody who's in the stream who wants it. We'll pick it randomly at the end of the show. We're not going to stretch it out to next week. So you got to be there tomorrow night if you want a copy. Okay? And Sunday night over on your channel, 8:00 Central. That's 9:00 your time.
no.
No?
Oh yeah, 9:00 my time.
9:00 your time. Yeah.
9 o'clock Eastern, 8:00 Central. Yes.
Exactly. Over on Aged Boomer's channel, Geeky Geezers, where we'll touch on some of the things we alluded to tonight, but basically the geek news of the week.
Yeah. Interesting week.
Oh, Wednesday
all
night over on Soundtracks
Yes.
with Birdman. Is that the one I'm at?
Yes.
I will be there with Aged Boomer as we do a watch party for Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes, I have a lot to say on the soundtrack because I bought the special super edition that has all the alternate tracks of Axel F on it.
Let me just say that was a great soundtrack from a time when films had great soundtracks.
Definitely. And
You know, we're not just talking the score. We're talking release songs that were on the radio all the
Yes.
time.
The
Loved
Heat
it.
is on. Remember The Heat is on?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's Glenn Fry, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, definitely check that out. That'll be Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern and I guess 7:30 Central. Okay.
Yep. Tuesday and Thursday, you got Wolf Den Media with his rambles. Green Lion Girl on Wednesday and Friday.
And then back to next week, I guess, right? With
Then
us.
back to next week. Yep. So next week, Friday, don't know what we'll be talking about. I'm going to get a message out to Bud Boy Productions, see if he wants to do a show with me next week. And maybe we'll talk about U.S., British, TV, movies, culture.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for being with here. Yeah, and this is after I've sobered up. This is really good. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Love starting my weekend with all of you. And, as I always say, bye-bye, baby. Time to hit the road to dreamland. Don't cry, baby. It was divine, but the cuckoo is finally crowed. Time to hit the road. Good night, everyone.